a melting heart cake.
I love this.
You ready?
This is a showstopper.
Yeah, hard to get out, but easy to eat. Okay, so I'm first gonna start and show you how to make a really cool dome out of chocolate, okay? So you're gonna take your bittersweet or your milk chocolate, you're going to double boil, which basically is some water down there that doesn't touch the bottom of the boil. You get it nice and warm, chocolate goes in here, you stir it, or you just put it in the microwave for like 5 seconds at a time. 5 more seconds, 5 more seconds, and stir in between, and you'll get to the right consistency. You're gonna let this cool down, though, because you're gonna take a balloon and just, you know, figure out the size of the dome that you want. And then you're just gonna run the balloon in it.
Cool.
Okay. And then line up all of your mugs. All right.
Okay.
Just run it around a little so it doesn't drip too much. You could do this like that, or maybe if you're making smaller ones, use like muffin tins to hold it in there. And then they're going to chill like this until they harden. And then you say to yourself, okay, well, how do I get the dome? Just gonna go, okay? All right, so now that you've got these scalloped edges that may not be perfect for you, the way to even them out like this is to just get a warm tray. You could put this in the oven at 100 degrees, 150 degrees or whatever, put it over the range, and then you're just going to put this here, and if you could imagine, if this were warm, you move it around,
smart.
and then you've got a nice flat top. So I am ready. I've got the dome done. Jeff, what's up?
Well,
Dome done, boom.
Now we need to make our white chocolate sauce to melt the dome, right? Give it a nice little contrast of colors. So here I have some warm, heavy cream in this here pot. And then we're gonna add white chocolate chips to this. Okay, so you just wanna kinda get this going until it starts melting. A little bit vanilla extract, right? Really good friends with white chocolate vanilla. Wouldn't you agree?
Yep.
Okay, so this is gonna like
Oh, that
just
looks
really
good,
come
Jeff.
together nice, right? Because you want this hot, because without the heat, it's not gonna melt the
Look at
dome.
the thing.
All right, I'm gonna
Thank
turn
you.
your heat up.
Here
a
we're
little
going,
bit.
you know.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Look at this, look at this.
So that's just white chocolate, your vanilla, and what else?
White chocolate, vanilla, and some milk.
You're keeping that warm, right?
I'm keeping it warm. How do you, Geoffrey?
All right, so I'm gonna make our heart cakes. First, we need some crunchy texture from a chocolatey crumble. So I'm just gonna use all these ingredients here. We have chocolate vanilla cookies, freeze-dried raspberries.
Love them. Got them at the house now.
Delicious.
So great.
Mini brownies and some raspberries.
There you
And
go.
a little mold. These are very ubiquitous in the kitchen. All chefs use these. They're
Amazing
really good.
amount of utility to that.
Yeah, exactly. There's no recipe to this. You're just gonna throw a little of everything. A lot of texture, some fresh, the juicy of the fresh
This is so
raspberries.
cool.
The brownies.
Chocolate berries.
Chocolate berries. Some more
Very
raspberries.
ubiquitous on Valentine's Day,
They
too,
are.
might I add. A lot of chocolate
Gosh.
berry combos.
Lot. Okay,
You can use a biscuit cutter for this if you don't have the ring molds.
No bake, no fuss. What? Sign me up. I'm gonna make some raspberry pretzel cups. All right, so I have some raspberries that I've roughly chopped. I added it to a bowl with 1 tablespoon of sugar. Now that's called macerating. It's drawing out the juice, kind of making a syrup and softening the raspberry. I'm gonna let my raspberries sit. Now I'm gonna make my pretzel crust. I'm gonna add 2 cups of pretzels to my food processor and a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. All right, so I have about 4 tablespoons of melted salted butter. All of these ingredients are gonna make my crust. Give it a zap. And I want the texture of crumbs. I don't really want big pieces of pretzel in there. One more time. That should do it. Okay. I am pouring my pretzel crust into a bowl here. Make sure I get all the good buttery bits at the bottom. All right, next, the cream cheese filling. In this mixer, I'm gonna add 1.5 blocks of full-fat cream cheese. I'm gonna add 1/3 cup of powdered sugar. I'm gonna add the zest and the juice of 1 lemon. I'm gonna add a little vanilla and some heavy cream. I'm just gonna mix this all together, and this will be the filling for my raspberry pretzel cups. All right, so I'm gonna scrape down my sides. So the way it's looking now, I want it to be a little bit more fluffier. And when you're making fillings like this, if you add powdered sugar, that will help with the consistency of it. So I already put a 1/3 cup in there. I think I'm gonna add another 1/3 cup. And it could stand to be a little sweeter. Let's see. Done. Now it's time to build the cups. I'm filling the bottom of the glass with my pretzel crust. I'm going to add my cream cheese filling. Okay. Now I'm going to add my raspberries. The raspberries have softened, some of the juice has come out of it. It's kind of created some of that, like a syrup with the sugar. This looks incredible. Now I've got some sweetened whipped cream I'm going to top it off with. And then I get cute with it. Add a little raspberry on top and a pretzel. I'm gonna make the rest, but since this is already made, I might as well try it, right? You gotta get to the bottom where the crust is.
Black Forest cupcakes. I really, really love anything in a little tiny package, and cupcakes are perfect for that. What I want to do now is just start building up my dry ingredients. So a cup of flour in, and then what I want to do is get a 1/2 cup of my cocoa here, right in. Yeah, Black Forest cake, let me tell you, one of the great discoveries when we moved to Germany. Blood sausage, not so much. All right, a 1/2 cup of cocoa powder in. And then I want to get a teaspoon of my cinnamon. I'm gonna add some nice warmth to it. Nice little base. Works really well with the cocoa. And then what I want to do is get in some baking soda. Some leavening agent's really going to help out here. The baking soda is going to work with the buttermilk that I add later, and my cocoa powder here has a certain level of acidity. And then I've got the baking powder, and that's going to really just start to react with the heat in the oven. So these are going to be nice and fluffy and airy. Good to go. A little bit of salt. And that is it for the dry ingredients. Nice healthy pinch. All right, just give that a nice sift so we can make some nice and light and fluffy and airy cupcakes. I just want to start working on my eggs and my sugar here to get them all nice and creamy and ribbony. So into my stand mixer, 3/4 of a cup of sugar. Good old white granulated sugar here. And then to that, I got some eggs to get into play. About 5 eggs, just gonna crack them in and move them around in my bowl here with my little whisk attachment. Until the sugar starts to dissolve, it's gonna be a nice and ribbony texture. It's gonna be a pretty yellow color to it, kind of lightens up on you. And then I'm just gonna start adding in the dry ingredients. Right now, I wanna build some more flavor into the cupcakes. About 1/3 of a cup of my buttermilk goes in. It's gonna make it moist, adds zip. It's gonna be really a great addition to the cupcakes. And then right here on the stove, I've got a 1/2 stick of butter that I started to melt. Get that right in as well. And then to that, I'm gonna add some vanilla. Just gonna add a really beautiful undertone of just good sweetness and flavor. And that's it. Give it a nice little swish and get it right in. I'm gonna turn this on. Not so high. And that's it. Buttermilk, vanilla, yummy butter. So what I want to do is add the dry in part so as not to kind of overwork my batter here. We're not making bread, we're making cupcakes. No kneading involved. Just kind of work it out. Now that this is all pretty much incorporated, what I'd want to do is get in my cherries and get in my chocolate. Bring that back up, back on low. Get my cherries right in. It's going to be so yummy. A lot of times you'll see a big old Black Forest cake and it's got the layers of cream and then the chocolate shavings over the top. And this to me is just a nice little miniature representation of that. I'm gonna top it off really nice and give it some curb appeal in the end. Look at that, that's it and it's good to go. So what I wanna do now is kind of release it and get it ready for my muffin tins. Getting the last scoop of my Black Forest cupcake, good to go. all gonna pop up at nice even mounds because I used my ice cream scoop here. Love that little trick. And that's it. They're ready to go into my 350-degree oven for just 15 to 17 minutes. All right, now let's do this Black Forest cupcake here. Double trouble with chocolate chips on the inside, and it's already chocolatey. To that, I'm gonna add a little mound of my marshmallow cream right over the top. Don't forget, got the dried cherries on the inside. And then just to make it nice and special, I'm gonna put a little cherry on top. Come here, right there. A little bit of shaved.
I'm showing Ashley how to make Cin-fully sweet chocolate molten lava cake. You would think it's hard to make, it's not. Okay, let's do it together. So you go over here and melt some chocolate and butter. Cousin Ashley has about a bar of semi-sweet chocolate, and she also has about 8 tablespoons of unsalted butter, which is a stick. Gonna melt that down, make sure it's all melted, incorporated, and we're using a double boiler method because it doesn't heat as fast. You can control the heat a little bit more. Don't forget a pinch of salt. Salt enhances the flavor of chocolate and sweets.
So far, this is really easy.
While Ashley's melting the chocolate, I want to get started on the cake base. I have 1 whole egg here and the yolk from another egg. Slowly separate that. Add the yolk in there. 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. Want to beat this until it becomes nice and fluffy. You want to create as much air as possible. This is where the lift is going to come in that ramekin. All right, Ashley, I'm done over here. Is that chocolate melted?
We're looking good.
I want to slowly fold in this hot chocolate. You got to temper it. You don't want to scramble. You also want to fold it in because you don't want to lose that volume in the eggs and sugar.
How does the molten stay chocolatey?
You basically underbake it.
Oh. And it just oozes out. So yeah. So this is the magic of that.
Yeah, it's
Now take your time because
It's
it
the
looks
area.
like it's going to be amazing.
It is going to be amazing, of course. Now I'm going to sift in 2 tablespoons of flour. How about you fold and I sift in?
Okay. Under, over.
Okay, you're getting there, girl.
I mean, a little something, a little.
So I've got 2 ramekins here that I have buttered and kind of coated with some cocoa so it doesn't stick. You don't want to fill it all the way to the top. Need some room to rise.
This looks so good.
Oven is set to 425. We're gonna pop this in there for 12 minutes. Smell it. You smell like chocolate?
Get it out, get it out.
Oh, they're so pretty.
They are gorgeous.
Careful with these. These are fairly sensitive.
I mean, look at this. Who speaks my language?
All right, so Ashley, what we're gonna do is run the paring knife around the edges to make sure it doesn't stick, okay? When I
okay.
put the plate on top, position it in the center, flip it over, okay?
Wow.
Let's see, let's
Okay.
see. Ooh, that's it. Take some of that powdered sugar, top it off with a little raspberries on top. There you go. Cheers. Ooh. Ooh.
This is magic.
Now taste it.
It's good.
Girl.
Chocolate-covered strawberry tart with a surprise in the center.
Ooh, fancy.
This is
Ooh, a tart.
super yummy. Jeff, I'm gonna have you help me.
Okay.
So if you can just take the stem off those strawberries and then
Okay.
slice them in half lengthwise, that'd
Beautiful,
be great.
you got
That's
it.
gonna be for our garnish.
I don't wanna.
So I'm
Sure,
making the
you.
filling right now. I've got a few cups of cream and a little bit of milk in here that I'm just heating up. And then to make this strawberry, I'm gonna add to it, you know those freeze-dried strawberries that are so popular now, freeze-dried fruit?
those.
So this is a great way to infuse flavor. So they're just freeze-dried, you put them right in there and just kind of let them steep. It takes about 5 minutes.
I never seem to find the freeze-dried
They're in
fruits.
the snack aisle, like where all the trail mix and everything is, so
I
around
stay
there.
away from the snack aisle.
Take it off the heat because these burn so quickly.
Yeah.
It's little white chocolate chips. So I actually use the mini chips because these melt so much faster, so it takes less time and you have less risk of burning them then. So I just put in a whole bag and I put in some vanilla extract for a little extra flavor. And then just stir this up, let it start to melt. That milk's hot enough that it's gonna melt it. So we've got cream, milk, freeze-dried strawberries, white chocolate chips, and vanilla. Okay, so now it goes into the blender. So it's gonna have all that good strawberry flavor in there. And then just turn it up. All right, so the filling's gonna go into the tart shell. I just made this out of chocolate wafers, sugar, and butter, ground it up, put it into a tart pan, and baked it for about 10 minutes. So now you just pour this filling in.
How easy is this?
It's so easy, and since there aren't any eggs in this custard filling, you don't need to bake it. So this just goes into the fridge, because I like to let it completely cool. Jeff, will you open the fridge for me?
Yes, I will.
Did you know that strawberries are the only fruit with their seeds on the outside?
I never realized
I need
that.
both
Sorry.
sides.
I was totally distracted by Sonny's tidbit there. I was amazed. Because I heard Sonny, then I looked at the strawberries, and
I'll bring the tidbits.
my world came crashing.
I didn't know. What about
All
blackberries?
right, so
What is that
after it goes into the fridge and cools completely, you put it into the freezer for just 30 minutes. So, and I'll tell you why. It's because of the sauce we're gonna put on top. So you want it to get like extra cold. So it needs that little extra 30 minutes in there. And it's because I'm using this chocolate sauce that's the shell
The
that hardens
magic,
up.
the
And
magic
it
chocolate.
needs that. You're gonna use pretty much a whole bottle. on
There's
this.
nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with it
No.
at all.
All right, so you just wanna let that set up. It's
really
and start
pretty.
to harden.
So beautiful.
So you just let this harden up, and while it hardens, because it just takes a minute or two, we're gonna do the finishing touch of our garnish. So I made some chocolate-covered strawberries here. You can do the chocolate covering on the strawberries with either those little chocolate melts, or you can use just regular chocolate chips and let them harden completely. And then I melted some white chocolate, and I'm gonna use this as a garnish.
They actually sell the chocolate in a little tub you can microwave to dip your strawberries into.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I'm not in the
cute.
snack aisle, but I'm in that chocolate aisle.
Okay, so you just pipe this on. All right, so let's decorate now.
Let's do it.
Jeff, you gonna help me with this?
Yes, I will.
Oh,
So we're gonna take those
Oh, yeah, look at-
strawberries that you so beautifully cut, and we're just gonna put them all the way
Rotate
around.
around like that.
All right, let's put our final strawberries on, and now we're gonna take these fancy strawberries
Okay,
and
wow.
just put them around the center.
This is
You like
awesome.
it? You like
Make this tonight.
I'm gonna make a mocha mousse with just chocolate and coffee, and then I'm gonna make it frozen. So good. So first I'm gonna start with chocolate. I need 3 ounces of chocolate. That's bittersweet chocolate. Then I'm gonna add coffee liqueur, 3 tablespoons. It's gonna give it real depth of flavor. And this is all set over a pot of simmering water so the chocolate melts. 3 tablespoons of water. And this is the second coffee part, 2 teaspoons of instant espresso granules. I always use some coffee and chocolate because it really brings out the flavor, but in this case, I'm really doing a balance of the two. This dessert makes a fabulous presentation too. Okay, this is done. So off the heat, I want it to cool a little bit. And now for the eggs and sugar. So the basis of any mousse is egg yolks. So I've got 6 egg yolks at room temperature, 3/4 of a cup of sugar. This is 1/2 and 1/4. And I'm just gonna beat them on high until they get kind of this consistency of mayonnaise. They get very light yellow and very thick. In the meantime, I need cocoa powder. So 1/4 cup of cocoa powder. I use really good Italian cocoa powder. What this does is really just intensify the chocolate flavor. Okay, I think the eggs are done. I'll show you. It gets really thick, really like mayonnaise, and what you want to see is that it comes back on itself in a ribbon, and it's done. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to add the cocoa powder on low speed. You don't want it all over the kitchen. Whoa! In a cloud of cocoa. Some vanilla, 1 teaspoon. And then the cooled chocolate mixture. So pour it in slowly. And this is the base for chocolate mousse. You want to be sure the chocolate's not too hot because otherwise you'll end up with chocolate scrambled eggs. Okay, I'm just going to scrape this. You want to be sure you get all the chocolate in it. It smells amazing. Chocolate and coffee. Okay, next the egg whites. Put this aside. clean bowl and a whisk this time. And I've got the 6 egg whites, also at room temperature, and a pinch of salt. And I'm gonna whisk these until they form really soft peaks. High speed. Just a few more steps to go. So when the egg whites are in soft peaks, they get folded really carefully into the chocolate mixture. Then the next thing to do is beat some heavy cream. So 2 cups of cold, heavy cream right into the same bowl. No need to clean it. It gets beaten until it forms soft peaks. Then fold the cream into the mixture, followed by 4 ounces of grated bittersweet chocolate. Nearly there. So the mousse just gets poured into a souffle dish, covered in plastic wrap and frozen for several hours or overnight. So now all I have to do is finish it off by piping whipped cream around the top. So for the whipped cream, I'm just gonna whip 1 cup of cold, heavy cream, 1 tablespoon of sugar, and a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. It gets whipped on medium and then on high speed until it forms stiff peaks. Don't overwhip it. Then it's spooned into a pastry bag fitted with a large star tip. Looks amazing. But just to make it even better, I got a little bit of chocolate and I like to shave it right onto the top. Just makes it look fantastic. And I use a vegetable peeler. I find that's the best way to do it. I just soften this a little bit in a microwave. The more that you soften it, the longer the curls are.
I am making my mini strawberry princess cakes. I love them so much. They look like a dessert right out of a fairy tale. To start, I'll make my cake. I'll get 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour and 3/4 of a cup of almond flour, a teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and half a teaspoon of salt to bring out all of these flavors. That's it for my dry ingredients. I'll give this a whisk. Dry ingredients are mixed. I'll add 1 stick of softened unsalted butter and 3/4 of a cup of sugar. I'll cream this until it's light and fluffy a few minutes. I'll reduce the speed and crack my egg. Okay, so let this incorporate. And then 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 1/4 teaspoon of almond extract will give that perfect princess cake flavor. I could smell almond all day. I'll reduce this to low now and add my dry ingredients and buttermilk alternating in 3 additions just to help everything incorporate smoothly. Okay, everything is just about combined. I want to be careful not to overmix and get a tough gummy cake. So I'm just gonna finish up mixing with my spatula. Okay, this is smooth and combined. This is a 1/4 sheet pan that I've greased and lined on the bottom with parchment so that it doesn't stick. I'll plop this right on. I'll spread it out evenly all the way to the edge. Okay, I'll get this into the oven at 350 degrees and bake it for about 18 minutes until a toothpick stuck into the center comes out with just a few crumbs. My cake is cooled and I'm ready to assemble. I've got my jam here and a little biscuit cutter. And if you don't have one of these, you can use a glass, but it's important that the cake is cooled. That way you get cleaner cuts. So I'll just stamp out my circles and I'll transfer it to a new sheet pan, which will help me assemble. I'll spread these with a layer of jam. A nice thin, even layer going all the way to the edge. And now a big dollop of fresh whipped cream. This is just heavy cream beaten with some powdered sugar. And now I'll keep on going with the rest of my cakes. These are coming together. I'll stick them in the freezer to firm up while I prepare my marzipan. My cakes are frozen and they're ready to become princesses. I've kneaded some food coloring into marzipan, which I'm gonna use to cover the cakes. And then I have some pink and green for the rose detail on top. So I'll take a circle. I've got some strawberry jam here that I have thinned out with a little bit of water. And this is just gonna help glue the marzipan onto the cake. And then press it all over the top. I wanna cover the cake completely. So I'll just gently press it around the sides. I'll make sure to go all the way down to the bottom so that there's no cake peeking out. Now for the rose on top, I'll pinch a little piece of pink marzipan, make a little snake, and flatten it into a long skinny oval, and then coil it up to make a little rose, like that. And then I'll add 2 little green petals. I'm just making little ovals for the petals. Darling. Okay, I'll decorate the rest of my cakes now. Yay! Okay, gotta taste one. I'm obsessed with everything about these. They're fluffy, they're sweet, they're almondy.
We're gonna change my last name to Tiramisu, Jeff.
Oh,
That's what
right.
I'm making. I am whipping up everyone's favorite coffee-flavored dessert. So I have those cakey ladyfingers. You can either make them or buy the cakey ones, and I dried them out in an oven. And then we're gonna start to build the tiramisu by mixing cognac and a lot of it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
A lot of cognac.
You know, and a little sugar with the coffee,
I saw that.
and
Sonny's
that's what
drinking.
we're gonna soak.
It's good.
So we're gonna, Sonny, you're gonna start to build this.
Yeah?
You're gonna do a quick donkey drive-by,
Sure.
and you're gonna build. But first, on the bottom, just do a little dusting of cocoa, and then we're gonna do the sort of whipped cream egg yolk mascarpone filling, which is just 6 yolks with half a cup of sugar. I'm just gonna whisk it together here.
Chef? Oui.
Beautiful.
Okay.
And then just start dunking and building that first layer. I've got the yolks and the sugar. And then right over a little water bath, a little low heat, you know, steamy water, just under simmering. And all we're doing here is cooking the eggs, because I think you have to have that eggy note in the tiramisu, but you don't want raw eggs.
No.
You just don't. So we're avoiding that by whisking these 6 yolks. You can do it with a hand mixer, too. Take a little break, or, you know, work for your dessert a little bit.
Tries and delts, primarily.
Yeah.
That's what kind of musculature system you're working out right now? in case you
Exactly.
wondered-
And the yolks,
wondered?
the yolks, what you're looking for here really is a fluffiness. You want the eggs to be cooked. Scrape the sides down so the eggs don't stick to the sides and scorch and become like a tiramisu omelet. We don't want that.
All right, layer 1 is down. Quick dunk. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like a hot summer day. You just want to dip your toe in real quick
Yeah.
and jump right back out into
Absolutely.
our coffee mixture and right into the bottom there with the cocoa dusting.
This is about ready, and it's warm. So when you make it, you want to just take it off and let it cool a little bit, and then you have this.
Look at
nice
that,
and
beautiful.
cooled.
So light.
Yeah, it's light and fluffy, but it's got that classic tiramisu egg note that you really need. And to that, I have a little whipped cream
Ooh, bring it.
that I whipped with
From the can?
sugar and added some mascarpone at the end. Add the egg mix right in there.
Look at that.
How is this not going to be good?
Yeah, it's good. And you know, you have a lot of flavor notes in here. So you have the sugar and the vanilla in the whipped cream itself. And you don't have to worry too much about, you know,
It's not a souffle.
you don't need to be you don't need to be too delicate. You really do want this layer mixed together.
It's not like overly sweet, you know? It's got some really cool vibey notes, the textures, the mouthfeel.
How's that sauce looking, by the way, Sonny? You stir it?
It's bubbling.
Oh, man, I think you
Like
got
a
to give it a
bubbling
stir.
crude.
You got to give it a stir. I mean, you
know what I
can't
mean?
neglect the sauce.
Is there a spoon over here? What happened to our
I
stirring
know we're all
spoon?
mesmerized by
Oh, I
this
see it.
tiramisu construction.
It's melted into the actual sauce, the spoon.
Yeah.
How's it looking in there?
Looks good in here. Looks good in here, guys.
And so this is fun to build too. And then you just, you know, you let this sit in the
drop 'em.
fridge.
I'll drop them.
You make it the next day, right? For the next day, one day
You
ahead.
definitely want this to sit in the fridge overnight if you can. Sometimes I've made it and not been able to wait. And this is big enough that you could, you know, have a little scoop and maybe fill it in a little with a little cream and pop it back in the fridge and just say, oh my God,
What happened?
amazing.
Alex,
Yeah.
is the cognac the normal booze that you use?
I mean, I think it's a little bit on the fancier side. Use a coffee liqueur here.
Do you at
Dust
the end,
again,
dust?
I do.
Yeah. Curb
Why
appeal.
not?
Wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. And then I have a little swap here that's had its 24-hour rest period.
Look at it. It's alive,
It's a little plastic wrap. It's got a
Oh,
lot
you
of...
do a blanket of it. Let me curb appeal it the way you curb appeal it.
It's got a lot of dairy in it, so whenever you have something high in dairy, it absorbs other flavors in the fridge.
So you definitely want to wrap it.
Yeah,
Come
you
on,
want an
can't
onion
you
and
tell?
smoked salmon tiramisu going on there.
stop.
Yeah, you've got your sausage and tomato sauce that you pop in
Disgrace.
the fridge still hot, and
No, I
you
do
know
it
the
all the time. I'm the worst
tiramisu.
person like that. I'll throw the entire pot of sauce hot in the fridge.
And you can just cut. I think that we talk a lot about texture, that you can just cut through this and eat it is another layer of texture. Just a little shaved chocolate on top.
Yes.
I'm not gonna, I think the best tiramisus that Ava and I ate in Italy, and my favorite, which is on Mulberry Street, were the ones that were simple.
Yeah,
How is it,
cheesy?
cheesy?
I know what he's doing.
I hope it's good.
He's thinking about it.
Simple.
He's thinking of 6 adjectives right now.
To be perfectly honest, I'm not a tiramisu fan. I was going to say that up front.
More of an affogato guy for your coffee?
love
I just think
Affogatos.
I've had so many bad tricolores and tiramisus that I stopped searching,
Yeah.
But I'm not a fan of normal tiramisus until today.
Until today.
This is off the chart good. And the cognac is the booze to use. It is
Gives it
because
that little-
it has a little bit of alacrity. It has a little bit of,
It's boozy.
it's a little rough.
Yeah.
And you kind of need it. It's
It
like
comes in hot.
scotch and honey, it's like a cabaret singer right at the end.
Making a flourless, dense chocolate cake. It's a dish that I call cracked chocolate earth. We're gonna melt some chocolate down, okay? Now I've got a pot of water and we got a nice bowl. You wanna make sure the bowl is big enough to fit on top of the rim so it doesn't sink all the way down the bottom. And also, most important, make sure the amount of water that you have in the bottom of this pot doesn't touch the bottom of this bowl. So it'll actually scorch the chocolate and it'll cause it to seize and it'll get really crumbly, and it's not what we're looking for. All right, so we're gonna take the bowl, put it right there. Now we're gonna add some bittersweet chocolate to this. We got 60% chocolate. All right, this is like Willy Wonka trying to get the golden ticket. When you see something that says 60%, that means it has 60% cocoa fat, which means it's pretty rich, it's pretty dark. All right, so to the chocolate, I'm gonna add 2 sticks of butter. Let the whole thing start to melt down. Then we're gonna add some eggs to this. Now this is a flourless chocolate cake, which means the only thing that's gonna hold it together are eggs for the most part. So we're gonna take 9 eggs and we're gonna crack them. All right, check this out, it's kinda cool. One-handed. All right, two-handed. Okay. All right, so we're gonna get rid of the egg carton. I'm just gonna wash my hands really fast. All right, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some sugar to the yolks themselves. And we're gonna do a very technical term called creaming the yolks together. We're gonna add some sugar to that. All right, so I got a little spoon here. All right, we got our sugar. And for the most part, it's a very simple process. All right, it's about 3/4 of a cup of sugar for the 9 yolks. I'm just gonna eyeball it. And I think that's about enough. Okay, then we're gonna take a whisk, and we're just gonna whisk the yolks and cream the whole thing together, okay? And it's gonna put some elbow grease into it. You can do this on a tabletop mixer if you want to, but I mean, I'm kind of a lazy cook. I don't like to clean too much, right? So we got the bowls are going anyway. All right. Let's work a little bit of air into the yolks. All right, so they're nice and creamy. All right, see that? All right, so really kind of beautiful. Really pale yellow, nice and frothy. All right, then we're gonna add another whisk to the mix. We're gonna whisk up the egg whites, and then we're gonna put the whole thing together. If I dumped all the chocolate into the eggs at one time, the possibility of the eggs becoming scrambled eggs is pretty high. So what I wanna do is warm the egg yolks up first before we add all the chocolate. By that, we're just gonna add just a little bit of chocolate, all right, just to kind of bring it back up the temperature so it's not such a shock. All right, then once it's all safe, we're just gonna dump the whole thing in. All right, so we've got egg yolks, we got sugar, we got chocolate, we got butter. Sounds like a chocolate jacuzzi to me, right? All right, great. All right, so now we've got all the chocolate and the egg yolks incorporated. Now we're gonna take the whites and we're gonna fold the egg whites in, all right, in one big clump. All right, and we're gonna try to incorporate the eggs without deflating them, all right, because this is what's gonna give us a lot of lift. We're gonna take a springform pan, right, which has a little latch on it, and the bottom comes out. All right, we're gonna use this because it's gonna be really easy to get the cake out once we're finished with it. Now, right now we got the oven preset at 375 degrees for our roasted sweet potatoes with honey and cinnamon. All right, I'm gonna take those out and we're gonna drop the temperature just a little bit, like 350 degrees. And this is gonna bake for about a half an hour, and it's gonna look absolutely beautiful. It's gonna look all crunchy and crackly on top. It's a really great dessert, and it takes you like 5 minutes to make. Okay, so we got, all right, so you got a rack. I got a sheet pan. How hard is that? It's gonna go right on top, and into the oven for a half an hour. And I'm gonna put together just some simple whipped cream, you know, because I'm a chef. It's always about the garnish, right? All right, a little bit of whipped cream to go on top of the cracked chocolate earth when it comes out. And we are well underway from having an amazing Sunday meal. All right, so our cracked chocolate earth, our flourless chocolate cake has been out of the oven, it's rested, and it looks really beautiful. It smells amazing. And what I'm gonna do, it's still a little warm, but I'm gonna pop it out of the springform pan and just slide it out just like that. All right, we're gonna take it, we're gonna dust it with some powdered sugar right on top, one little dust. All right, and then hook up a little bowl of whipped cream right on the side and let people come and get it, and that's it. Perfect flourless chocolate cake. You're gonna make this every time you wanna make a chocolate cake, I promise you.
I am making my version of the pot de crème. That's French for a pot of cream. Okay, so the first thing I'm doing is heating up my cream. That's 2 cups of heavy cream that I'm gonna get to like a rolling boil. While that heats up, I am going to make a caramel sauce. All right, a half a cup of sugar, a 1/4 cup of water, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Whisk that together. Now, as this heats, that sugar is going to begin to brown, and I'm gonna keep a close eye on this because once this starts to melt and cook, you could run the risk of it burning and crystallizing on the sides. So that's why I have some water here and a pastry brush to kind of brush down the sides so it doesn't crystallize. And it's also important not to stir because that can introduce crystals in your pot. A pot de crème is basically a baked custard. If you've ever had a crème brûlée, it's very similar to that. Okay, I'm gonna swirl this around, making sure that I do not mix, and brush down the sides with a little bit of that water in my brush. Starting to smell that sugar melt. That sugar has caramelized. I'm gonna turn the heat off before it burns. I have my milk that I've heated here. I'm gonna add that heavy cream to the pot, slowly. You don't want it to bubble over. It's gonna be creamy and caramely. Has notes of like the molasses. That just smells so good. Okay, and now I'm gonna add a teaspoon of vanilla, about a capful. Mix it up, and I'm gonna go over here and make my custard. All right, so I have 4 egg yolks here, and I'm gonna beat this until it's pale in color. Just whipping some air into these egg yolks. This is gonna help give this cream some body. All right, so that is pale. And it's kind of doubled in size. All right, so now I am going to slowly add my caramel cream into these eggs. Now I'm going to temper it, just add just a little bit in at a time because I don't want those eggs to scramble. Now I can pour the rest in. Oh, that smells so good. So I have a strainer here. I am going to run this through the strainer because I wanted to make sure that it's really smooth. Because sometimes when you add hot liquid to eggs, you'll get pieces of like cooked egg. So you just want to make sure that you don't have that. That's why it's always best to strain. See, there's a little stuff left over. Don't need that. Okay, I have 4 ramekins here, and I'm going to evenly pour my cream. I'm going to bake this off, and add a little hot water in there to create a water bath to make sure that these cook evenly. I could just drink this right out of this pitcher right now. All right, oven is at 325. Add that hot water to create that water bath. Okay, I'm gonna let that go for about 40 minutes or until it becomes firm. So my caramel pot de crème has cooled, and now I'm going to top it off with some caramel popcorn on top for a little texture. Is your mouth watering? Mine is too.
I'm baking up my chocolate chunk cherry cobbler, which has a saucy tart cherry filling and a big buttery cakey topping that channels some major chocolate chip cookie energy. It's so good. To get started on the filling, I'll make a slurry, which will help thicken it up so that it's saucy and not too liquidy. And I'm using the juices from my thawed cherries. I only want about 1/3 of a cup, so I'll eyeball that into my big bowl here. I'll whisk in 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. I'll fold in my cherries, I've got 4 cups of them, and sweeten with 1/2 cup of sugar, which will be a nice balance to the tart cherries. Brighten this up with the zest of 1/2 lemon. I love a cobbler. And 2 tablespoons of the lemon juice. About the juice of 1/2 a juicy lemon. A teensy splash of almond extract enhances the natural flavor of cherries, and a good pinch of salt to bring out all these flavors. I'll combine this. Okay, that's it. Here's my pie plate. It's buttered, and I've got it on a sheet pan just to catch any drips of this juicy filling that could overflow. I'll pour this right in. So for the topping now, I'll get that going with 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/4 cup each of granulated sugar and brown sugar, and a tablespoon of baking powder, which will help this get super puffy, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'll combine this. I'll grab my cold ingredients. I've got a stick of cold cubed butter and 1/2 cup of cold heavy cream. I'll incorporate this butter until it's roughly the size of peas, but a few bigger bits are totally okay. Trying to work quickly so that the butter stays cold because that will yield more of a fluffy cake-like texture. Okay, this looks good. I'll toss in my chocolate now. This is 6 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate that I've coarsely chopped. I'll reserve a little bit of it to sprinkle on top. And then I'll bring this together into a dough with my cold heavy cream. I'll add an egg and some vanilla. Beat it up. And pour it right in. And fold it together. It's pretty crumbly. It'll be most efficient to get in here with my hands to bring this dough together. I want to make sure that all of the floury bits are incorporated. I want to keep it pretty shaggy. I don't want to overmix this and develop that gluten to get that gummy texture. I'll scoop it into big or rustic balls on top of this. It won't fully cover the filling at this point, but as it bakes, it'll expand and get fluffy. So I'll get 8 scoops around the perimeter and 1 scoop in the center. It's making me happy already. That's looking great. I'll poke in my remaining chocolate. Cobblers have got to have a crunchy top, so I'll sprinkle this with some more granulated sugar too. It'll help the top brown, give you that textural experience, and of course provide more sweetness. This looks great already. I'll stick it in the oven at 375 degrees for 40 minutes, and then tent it with foil and let it go for another 10 minutes until the filling is bubbly and the topping is fully cooked. I think I hear those cherries bubbling. The suspense is real. Hubba hubba. I love seeing all the chocolate chunks on top. I'll be serving this with vanilla ice cream later, but I'm sneaking a taste. All the way to the bottom to get the layers. Oh yeah.
Super tarts filled with Meyer lemon curd and fresh fruits. They're sweet, simple, and as the name implies, super. Room temperature butter, about 1/3 a cup of sugar. I want to put those egg yolks in. Actually, I can put the speed up a little bit higher now. There we go. Okay, so in goes the 1 yolk. There's 2 yolks. Just a little touch of some vanilla. There we go. And this right here, this lemon curd that we're gonna make and the fresh berries, I think you'll dig it. There's the flour. Okay. Every time. In amazement, I am gonna grab the 1/2 cup and actually do it exactly 2 1/2. And there we go. Now, see how it's starting to bind up there a little bit? You can really hear that mixture starting to work. I'm gonna take this out, wrap it in some plastic, pop it in the fridge for about an hour, bring it out before I'm ready to work with it. So let's zest in some of the Meyer lemon. You should smell it right now. It smells like perfume. So we get that in. Go ahead and cut these, and they're soft and super ripe. And I'm gonna get this the lemon juice in there. I'm looking for about 3/4 of a cup. Not exact science in this part as much as when I do the dough. Okay. Could have done these ahead of time. Okay. Compost that. Also, 3/4 of a cup of sugar is gonna go into this. And again, this is all going for these super tarts. Get a stick and a half of the butter in. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Oh, eggs. Last piece here. There we go. 1 egg, 2, and 3. Now, going over the double boiler, this is the tricky part, is don't want to get it too hot and too fast. I'm not looking to make an omelet, and that's the reason I'm doing it in a double boiler, is because if you try to do it right in a pan, no matter how much you really control the temperature, it could just get away from you. So I'm going to take this and just nicely, you know, under nice heat, and this is just a slight simmer on that water. Let that butter melt into that. Now, the dough is really nice and soft, and actually, if it gets too soft, it really starts to, you know, gets too warm, it'll start to break apart on you, but it's not too cold to where it's really hard to work. And I want to get this right about here. That's right about what I'm looking for, okay? About 1/8 of an inch. Pop that down. Give myself a little cutout like that. My little tart shell here. Throw it on. Press it down in first to the sides, run it around the sides. There we go. Crimp off the top of it. I bust these out. Little fork holes here so it doesn't puff up on me. Rocking out some Meyer lemon tarts, topping them off with a little garnish of some fresh California produce. What do you think of that? Baked it right up here with those Meyer lemons. You should smell that.
Chocolate pudding and pretzels. A simple, delicious chocolate pudding from scratch. These are some pretzels. I'm just gonna, like, you know, crinkle down onto a baking pan. This is gonna go on top of our chocolate pudding. I really love the sweet and saltiness of it. So just like a handful or two of pretzels right on your baking sheet. Then we're gonna take some butter straight from our stovetop. You can just microwave it if you want. And then we're gonna add a little bit of sugar. So there you go. The salt's already on the pretzels. Adding the sugar completes our flavor, our salt and sugar. The butter just helps it all stick to it. All right, so we're gonna put this in an oven for about 10 minutes. It could be a little bit less. 400 degrees is really tricky, so make sure you keep your eye on it, because all we want to do is for the butter and the sugar to coat the pretzels and get crispy, not burned. All right, so 10 minutes in the oven, not 11, and maybe not even 10, so keep your eye on it. All right, so first things first, we're gonna start our chocolate pudding with some cocoa powder. I don't know about you, but when I go to choose pudding, you know, flavors, chocolate's first. I love chocolate. It just makes you feel like a kid, you know, doesn't it? You know, chocolate pudding. I used to always like it in a little container growing up in my lunchbox, so give yourself a treat and do it homemade from scratch. All right, so we've got 1/2 cup of our cocoa powder, and then I'm gonna put in 1/2 cup of sugar as well. Now, this is like baking. This is actually really baking, but we're just doing it on the stovetop. So what you wanna do is just make sure you measure properly instead of eyeballing. So 1/2 cup of sugar to go along with our 1/2 cup of cocoa powder. All right. Cover that up. And then what I'm gonna add to it is kind of like our egg substitute. Now, there is gonna be an egg in this later on, but not as much as a normal pudding, which would be like 4 or 5 egg yolks. It just makes you feel like I'm really packing on the pounds, you know? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add the cornstarch. Now, the cool thing about cornstarch, it comes from the inside of the kernel of the corn. It's the white part, it's the starch part. It's what makes gravies thick, you know what I mean? It's what makes pudding thick if you use it that way. All you have to do is add it to something cold, turn up the heat, let it boil for a minute, thickness starts happening. And I really love it. Always stayed in the cabinet growing up. We used to play with it with a little bit of water. Just gotta go online and figure out how to play with cornstarch. I'm sure if you do a little search. You have loads and loads of fun with your kids. All right, so 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and then I'm gonna add 2 cups of milk. Now see how simple this is? Probably everything is in your pantry. Cocoa powder is there from that one time you wanted to make some homemade hot cocoa. Cornstarch, hopefully there. A little milk, a little sugar. This is really simple. All right, let's get my whisk out. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this milk in the center of my saucepan. Now I'm gonna turn the heat on, and this is really tricky. Don't do everything fast. It's all a slow process. We do not want to create lumps where there shouldn't be. Now I've already put the cornstarch in. Remember I said you gotta start with it cold? That's why this milk is going in cold. It's gonna help the cornstarch not lump up on us. But let me tell you, once everything gets mixed together, this has to boil just for a few minutes, but don't underboil it. Because cornstarch is all about a chemical reaction. It really has to make things thick. So you'll start to notice it tightening up on you. And the pudding is nice and thick. Cornstarch has kind of helped it get ready. What I'm gonna do right now is temper the egg before I put it into the pudding. Now the egg is gonna help in a lot of ways. It's gonna help with the creamy, it's gonna help with the thickness, it's gonna help with the silky taste on your tongue. It's gonna be really good. So the whole idea of tempering is to have the cold attack the heat instead of the heat attacking the cold. We don't wanna scramble our egg. We just wanna have it help our cooking. So put it in there, and really quick mix it in. And once you feel like you've kind of got it up to temperature, that's when you can pour it into your chocolate pudding. If you've ever had like a flan or any kind of other custard, and it had like a scrambled egg taste to it, the person probably just didn't temper it right, no big deal. I'll still eat it. It's all going in the same place. All right, so that's all mixed together. What I wanna do is one final layer of chocolate, because it's all about the chocolate. I'm gonna do some semi-sweet chocolate chips, about 1/4 of a cup, and they'll melt right in afterwards. Stir those in really quick. And this is a really simple and fast dessert, you know? 1 hour, your friends come over, you don't even think about it. Next thing you know, if everyone's hungry for a dessert, it's already done, it's ready. Or you can make like 3 or 4 and you have dessert all week for yourself. All right, so I've got my ramekins all ready to go. I'm gonna pour them in here. Don't need to do anything, just pour them in. And then I'm gonna put this in the fridge. Now, if you start thinking, ooh, what would it taste like if I put the pretzels on now? Don't worry about it. They're gonna get soggy. I already tried that. I thought it would taste good too, but they're great at the end. You just sprinkle them right over the top. It's nice and crunchy. All right, so pudding is in. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put these in the refrigerator for about an hour, let them set. Now, you know what I'm over here for. It is all about the chocolate pudding. An hour is almost too long to wait for this to set up. Don't forget our pretzels. We started off with some butter and sugar, so we've got the salty and the sweet going on. Let me tell you, I am so glad you tuned in and hang out with me while I gave Dom and my mom some love in our kitchen. Creamy, sweet, salty. Come on.
I'm making tiramisu for dessert tonight. Tiramisu is one of my all-time favorite desserts. The first time I had it was in the 80s, and this weekend has always had sort of an 80s theme to it since we all graduated in 87. I've got a pound of softened mascarpone cheese. I'm gonna scrape it into a bowl, then give it a stir so it won't have any lumps. Okay, the mascarpone is nice and smooth. You can also use softened cream cheese in a pinch. It's really good too. Now I'm gonna whip up some cream. I'll add about 1 cup of cream to the mixer and 1/4 cup of sugar. There are many delicious stages to tiramisu, and it's so much fun to make. It's also good to make ahead of time because it needs to sit and sort of become more wonderful by the minute. All right, I'll whip this up. Okay, I don't want to beat the cream until it's really stiff. I just want soft peaks. All right, there's lots of folding in tiramisu. First thing I'll do is fold the softened mascarpone into the whipped cream. That's why it's really important for the mascarpone to be really soft. If you put cold mascarpone into the whipped cream, once it hits the cream, it'll form these little lumps. It's kind of hard to get those out. But you don't want to beat it because this needs to be a light, fluffy mixture. Okay, that's all folded together. No big lumps. Now, an essential component to tiramisu is zabaglione. I made this earlier and it's been chilling in the fridge. It is so darn delicious. Zabaglione is an egg yolk mixture. So it's 5 egg yolks, 1/4 cup of sugar, then just whisk them together until they're pale yellow in color. Then the mixing bowl gets placed over a saucepan of simmering water, and at this point you gradually add 1/2 cup of Marsala wine, whisking constantly. Then just cook the zabaglione over the simmering water for about 5 minutes, scraping the sides and the bottom as you need to. Then when it's done, you take the bowl off the heat, cover it with plastic wrap, and chill it till it's cool. Okay, the zabaglione is all nice and folded into the mixture. Tiramisu has many stages, but they're all totally worth it. I've got 1.5 cups of really strong coffee, and I'm just gonna add 1/4 cup of Marsala wine. If you don't have Marsala, brandy also works. I've used brandy several times because it's hard for me to get Marsala wine around here. And then I'll just add about 1 tablespoon of vanilla, give or take. I've got 2 packages of ladyfingers. That's the classic tiramisu approach. I've made tiramisu before by making a homemade sponge cake, but ladyfingers are so simple and they're really delicious. I'm just gonna put a layer on the bottom of the trifle bowl. If you need to break them in half to fit them in the crevices, that's just fine. Now I have this glorious coffee liquid, and I'll just spoon it a little bit at a time right over the ladyfingers. The ladyfingers are super crispy and crunchy, and they just absorb that liquid. I put about 1 tablespoon of the coffee liquid over the top of each ladyfinger. This cream mixture is so delicious. I'm gonna spoon about 1/3 of it over the ladyfingers, and then I'll just spread it evenly over the top. All right, now I've got a piece of semi-sweet baking chocolate, and I'm just gonna grate some over the top. All right, now I've got some beautiful, juicy raspberries, and I'm just gonna lay them over the top of the chocolate. All right, got the raspberries in there. Now I'm just gonna keep building the layers until I run out of ingredients. And that is all there is to it. What a gorgeous tiramisu, look at that. Now I'm gonna stick this into the fridge for a few hours. The cookies are gonna continue to soften, the flavors will all meld and become perfect.
My friend Beth has had a flower shop in Amagansett for a long time, and she's just moved. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to do something special for her? So I was thinking, what do you do in a flower shop? I thought, afternoon tea, that would be great. Tea, flowers, and then our customers can have a treat when they walk in. So that's what I'm gonna do. The first thing I'm gonna make is red velvet cupcakes. Everybody likes those, right? So in the mixer, I'm creaming 1 stick of butter, it's 1/4 pound, and 1.5 cups of sugar until it's light and fluffy. It's really important that the butter's at room temperature. And then I'm gonna add the 2 eggs, 1 at a time. So next, I'm gonna add the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients alternately. I have the dry ingredients all combined. I'll show you how I made them. I put 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour into a sieve that I set over a bowl. Then I added 1/4 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder. This is what gives the cupcakes their deep chocolatey flavor. Plus 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And then I just sifted them all together. And next, the wet ingredients. I've combined them. Can you believe the color of this? Okay, so in here I have 1 cup of buttermilk. It's what makes the cake really moist. And 1 tablespoon of liquid red food coloring. That's the crazy part. 1 teaspoon of vinegar. The acidity of the vinegar reacts with the alkali of the baking soda, and it fizzles up and it makes a really light cake. Then a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, and I just mix it all together. So next, I'm gonna add the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients alternately to the batter. I always start and end with the dry ingredients. But first, I'm gonna turn the mixer to low so I don't get it all over myself. Okay, that's the batter. Wait till you see this, it's crazy. So now I'm gonna scoop the cupcakes. What I did was I set up cupcake pans with white paper liners. It just ensures that the cupcakes are gonna come out. No point in making them unless they do. I'm gonna scoop it out now. I'm just gonna make sure the batter's really well mixed. I'll show you how I do this. I always think with a mixer, it never quite gets the bottom. So you always wanna take a rubber spatula and mix it by hand at the end. There's always something that's not mixed in well. It smells really chocolatey. Okay, so I think the easiest way to scoop muffins and cupcakes is with an ice cream scoop. This is like a 2 1/4 inch ice cream scoop. Frankly, it's just a standard scoop, so almost everybody has one. And I just scoop it right in. And that way, every cupcake comes out exactly the same size. This is gonna make about 15 cupcakes. You're gonna bake at 350 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes, just until a toothpick comes out clean. And then when they're cool, I'm gonna ice them with this delicious cream cheese frosting. It's so good with the chocolate. So while I get all the food together for afternoon tea, Beth is getting the table ready. She's got great style. I'm sure it's gonna be just gorgeous. Okay, last one. Perfect. Into the oven, and Beth and her customers are gonna have fantastic cupcakes. The red velvet cupcakes are nice and cool, so they look great, and they're all ready for frosting. So I've made a really classic cream cheese frosting. It's got great vanilla in it. I'll show you how I made it. I just put 8 ounces of cream cheese at room temperature into a mixer fitted with a paddle attachment, along with 12 tablespoons of room temperature butter. That's 1½ sticks. I added ½ a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, then mixed it on medium speed just until it was combined. Be careful not to whip it. You don't want it too light. Then I added 3½ cups of confectioner's sugar. That's 3/4 pound. And then mixed it all together until it was smooth and delicious. So how easy was that? I'll show you my technique. I kind of like that these have a very earthy look about them. So I think they should be iced all the way to the edge. And then give it a big swirl on the top. Now, how great does that look? Last one. These are gonna be so delicious.
My magic mousse. It's magic because you cannot believe that something so simple is so amazing and decadent at the same time. This has 4 ingredients. Bananas, ripe avocados, dark cocoa powder, and maple syrup. That's it, okay?
Avocado.
And we're gonna peel a banana the right way.
That's how most primates do it, you know,
Yes.
if you watch them.
This way.
They always peel it that way.
Take that out. Bananas in the blender here. We're just gonna slice it up. That goes in. You want very ripe bananas and very ripe avocado. But what I do is I open up the avocado.
Careful.
And I put it, right away when I open it, I put it on the board. Ooh. For extra protection, I rub the board with lemon. Just like that.
Okay.
And so you're gonna have enough time to go about your business and those won't move. Bananas in here. We're gonna go in with the avocado. See how nice that is? Oh.
You know what? Peak avocado season is actually from January to March, so we're right in the pocket right now. It's a good time to make this magic mousse.
There's not enough. I have avocados in our house all the time. It's just one of those things you can grab for guac.
Well, when you buy the bag, too, you got 1, 2 that are like a couple days past when the prime.
Yeah, they grow up every day. Another batch grows up. And
you got to throw them out of the house, right?
Maple syrup.
Oh, that was maple syrup.
Cocoa powder.
I thought that was, you could probably use agave or something, right? Honey, maybe?
Magic. It's done.
That's it? That's what's magic about it. Don't you have to stir and make the thing?
You scrape it down. You can't overwhip this. It's not possible.
I'm not being skeptical here, Jeffers. Is this gonna be a mousse-like texture or more of like a pudding texture?
I don't think you're gonna have an issue with it. I really don't. I think that.
I mean, it's gonna be mousse, right? I love mousse.
We're gonna put it, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take it out, we're gonna put it into the, these containers here, and we're going to put it in the fridge a couple hours, just set up.
Okay.
Okay? But look at that. Now, you could whip cream and fold it, but why?
That looks like mousse.
It's really beautiful.
I think avocado is kind
That's
of
the magic,
the
avocado.
unsung dessert hero. You can really sneak an avocado in a few places because it has that creamy richness without having dairy.
We have served this. We have a fun. We serve this with guests at my house. We don't tell them what it is.
Guess the dessert. Come on, that's good.
So we're gonna put this in the fridge like 30 minutes to an hour, all right? Oh, look at this. You could put whipped cream on this. You could put coconut whipped cream on this.
I love the coconut whipped cream. This would be a good time to pull that out, yeah.
You know, just ice cream, I wouldn't do that. It's too heavy, but I like to put some raspberries.
But this is a weeknight dessert. I mean, this shouldn't, you shouldn't go all in on the weeknight dessert. It should be a,
Absolutely
what was that? Of course.
A little secret I like to use, what I like to do is put some raspberries on this, and I like to put a little cracked pink peppercorn, because I think the taste
Very
of-
weeknight.
There it goes. You had to, right? Just when you thought.
You know, Geoffrey, we literally had a 4-ingredient dessert that could easily be made, and then you just bust out the pink peppercorns.
And this is part of the magic, was that little extra added touch. So, there is your magic mousse. Look how beautiful that is.
Gorgeous.
Huh?
Beautiful.
It takes nothing, and good for you.
That's what's
Look at
so
that.
upsetting.
Look at the layers, too, with just the dolloping on there. It's beautiful.
And there you have it. It's velvety, it's chocolatey. We made it in minutes.
Chocolate cheesecake with a chocolate pretzel crust. Whew! You want chocolate? I'll give you chocolate. I'm starting off with making my crust. I've added about 15 chocolate sandwich cookies to this bag. I'm going to add in about 2 cups of thin pretzels. That's going to add that little bit of saltiness to it. Now I'm going to take out some stress. I'm going to smash these really fine. Dump this in a bowl. Add 4 tablespoons of melted butter, 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, and the sugar and butter kind of acts as a glue to keep the crust together. That butter should be nice and cool. I'm gonna use my hand. Feels like the butter has incorporated throughout the crumbs. Now I'm going to get my springform pan that I've lined with parchment paper. If you line your pan with parchment paper and a little butter so it can stick, it will pop right out. And it also makes the sides really smooth. I'm going to press it down with the same hand I mixed the crumbs up with. This is a very simple step. Just make sure that it's nice and even, because if it's not nice and even, you'll get a lopsided cake. I have the oven set to 350. I'm gonna pop it in there, let it bake for about 8 to 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna get started on my chocolate filling. So this filling is decadent, it's chocolatey. I'm gonna get started with 4 8-ounce sticks of room temp cream cheese. If not, what will end up happening is you'll have thick chunks of cream cheese throughout your batter. That's my last block. I'm gonna beat this until I can't beat it anymore. I need it to be nice and fluffy. So this is the texture I'm looking for, nice, light, and airy. I'm gonna add in 1.5 cups of granulated sugar. All right, that's great. I'm gonna use about 1/2 cup sour cream. And the sour cream gives it that classic tangy flavor. It's 1/4 cup of cocoa powder. So I've melted 10 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate over a double boiler. I'm gonna add that directly to the bowl. Ooh. Last ingredient, eggs. You gotta hold that cheesecake together. I'm adding in 1 egg at a time on low to make sure they're fully incorporated. 4 eggs total. Scrape the sides and make sure that every bit of this is chocolatey. Get my crust out of the oven. Cheesecakes can crack easily. So a way to prevent that is to bake it in a water bath. And if you're using a springform pan, line the bottom of that pan with foil. Now pour. Oh, what says I love you better than chocolate? Make sure it's nice and leveled. Now it's time to get it in a pan that's large enough to fit my 9-inch springform pan. I'm gonna grab my pot of hot water, add this to my pan. Hot water bath, just make sure the heat distributes evenly. And I just want enough water to fill the bottom. That looks good to me. Got my oven set at 350. I'm gonna bake this off for about 60 to 70 minutes, depending on your oven. Then I'm gonna prop open the oven, turn the heat off, and let it sit in the oven for about an hour. That's gonna help the cheesecake get to room temp, and it's also gonna help prevent cracking. So I have 8 ounces of my dark chocolate in my double boiler, and this is for my bark. I'm gonna let that melt a little bit. Take a pan, lined with some paper. I'm gonna take the same melted chocolate, pour it directly on my pan. I'm not gonna spread it too thin because I want a little snap to it. I'm gonna pop it in the freezer just until it hardens for about 5 to 10 minutes. Look at that crust. You see bits of that pretzel in there? It is beautiful. As if this wasn't enough chocolate, wanna add a chocolate hard shell. And all it is melted chocolate with coconut oil. I'm just gonna create this little drizzle effect on the edges, just like that. And because it does harden really quickly, I'm gonna just break up my bark and create these really cute pieces on top.
Chili, orange, chocolate, souffle. So I'm gonna put a pan on the fire here. I have a little milk. I'm making a roux. So I'm gonna put a little bit of salt, orange zest, chili pepper.
Wow.
I know. It's controversial. I'm gonna
What kind
stir
of
that
chili
around.
pepper?
Just pepperoncini, dry pepperoncini. Nothing fancy, and sugar. Okay, this is gonna be the base for my roux. And while that's just heating up, we don't wanna get that too hot. We just wanna get that warm. We have egg whites. Try to get them as room temperature as possible. Okay, so we wanna start this slow. I start with sugar. This is what we used to do. And then I end with sugar in the middle. You know, just a little bit of sugar all the time, and at the end, the rest of it. Okay, so while that's going on, this is warming. I'm gonna make my panade. Okay, so I'm gonna take soft butter, flour, and just sort of mash that in here. So I'm gonna put this right into the cream mixture. All right. And that's step 1 of step 2. So it's starting to come together. I'm gonna add a little more sugar. Okay, stir this. And at this point in time, try to get a whisk because we're gonna add eggs and chocolate to this mixture. Oh, the smell of the chili and the orange is fantastic. So this is gonna come together quite quickly. And don't worry if it seems lumpy. It's what you did right now is probably the opposite of what I always say to do, hot to hot. But you see how it is right now?
Yeah.
The roux form. We're gonna cook it just a little longer, not too much. And if it gets a little thick, just add a touch of milk. It's fine. So this is the base. It's nice and thick. It's okay. It's supposed to be thick because it's a roux. Then we're gonna add a little to the bowl. We're gonna add our yolks so we don't scramble them like this.
A little tempering, a little quick tempering there.
Yeah. And I'm gonna put this right in here, and I'm gonna add my chocolate to the roux, just like that. And melt it like that.
Just
and
dark
I think
chocolate?
we're done. We are done.
Yeah, what kind of chocolate are you using?
So this is bittersweet chocolate. Put it right in here, all right? Now we have our chocolate base. This is what the souffle will be able to give you the chocolate. It'll convey the chocolate to you, this right here, but it needs lift, and the lift is the egg white. So it's a very simple method. So we're gonna take a little of this in here, and we're gonna really get it in there. This is what you probably are taught not to do. Just stir it up. This is gonna form, almost temper the egg whites also, but make it easier for me to fold the rest of this mixture in, okay? Then we're gonna take it and plop it, just in and around, okay?
Very gently,
Yeah.
turning the bowl while using that pointy edge of the spatula.
Just wanna make sure that you don't overwhip it, but you have to get it together. So now we're gonna pour. Really important that these are buttered and sugared. What does that mean? Soft butter pour a bunch of sugar in it, turn it so everything gets really sugared, really important.
Look at that.
And so you know that you have enough, which I do. Just want to put a little bit in everything, then go back.
What's the goal here with the fill?
To the top. Your oven is at 350 degrees, okay? You don't want to kill these. You have to have like a gentle heat. So put them on a medium bottom rack so they have some room to expand and nothing above them, obviously. And then before they go in, you want to give them a little wrap on the bottom. So we spread them apart, like you mentioned, to get even heat distribution, just like that. And then take your thumb and put it in barely. This helps get an even seal on the edge. Okay?
And you're just kind of creating a space between the top, right?
Yes. And it makes, hopefully, for straighter sides.
Very cool.
Into the oven, about 18 minutes. Look at that.
Be careful.
Here we are.
Oh.
Souffle chocolat.
That's gorgeous.
Wow. Dude.
Okay, so onto a plate. We don't want to mess around. Onto a plate. Oh. Little powdered sugar.
Oh.
Sugar. Powdered sugar. And this is crème anglaise, which you just put in the middle like this.
This makes me so happy.
And you just put it right down the center. If you don't have crème anglaise, melted ice cream. There you have it. Le soufflé.
A dark chocolate cherry loaf cake. So I'm using a box of dark chocolate cake mix, and I added 2 eggs. And next comes some melted butter and milk. And it's that simple so far. I mean, I am so in love with cake mix-based cakes. I've been making them more and more, and they kind of went out of style for a while when everybody kind of thought that they had to make every single cake from scratch. But they are back with a vengeance. I just think they're brilliant because you can use them as the base and then add in a bunch of, you know, candies or chocolates. You can add different flavorings to the cake mix. And you can just have fun with them. And that's what baking cake is all about anyway. All right, so I got the batter stirred together. And for my add-in, I'm gonna add in some dark chocolate chips. Gosh, I am struggling today. I'm all fizzy with love over your dad, Alex.
Oh gosh.
So I'm using a regular loaf pan, and I lined it with parchment and sprayed the parchment with baking spray. So I'm gonna get the cake batter into the pan, and the parchment is just hanging over the sides, and that's gonna help me get the cake out after it bakes. So nice little trick. Anytime you wanna seamlessly get a cake out, you can just create like an overhang with the parchment. All right, spread it into a layer so it's all even on top. And then let's get this in the oven. Love it in the oven. That's right, Alex. Thanks for getting with the program today. So I'm gonna bake the cake at 350 degrees for about 40 to 45 minutes, and then I'll take it out, let it cool, and make the cherry icing. All right, the cake is baked and cooled, and I'm gonna make a bright pink icing just because it's a special occasion. This is a dinner for my sweetheart. And speaking of which, I cannot imagine making any sort of meal for Lad where dessert is not some form of chocolate. Chocolate and love, they go together. I should have a t-shirt that says that. So I'm making the frosting, and it's basically powdered sugar, a couple of big spoonfuls of cherry preserves, and then I also added about 5 drops of red food coloring, and I'm gonna give it a stir and see how pink it is. And I can always add more if I need to. I want this to be pretty thick, but also pourable, so I can just kind of drizzle it onto the cake. And looks like I'm gonna need just a little bit more milk just to thin it out. But I love this frosting because it has cherry preserves in it, but it's not like a really strong cherry flavor. Sometimes when you try to make something too cherry flavored, it can wind up tasting like cough medicine, I think. So I try just to add subtle hints of cherry, and I love how kind of sweet and tart the cherry preserves are. Okay, that is coming together well. And this is a chunky cherry preserve, so you can see the chunks of cherry in the frosting. Really, really good. Okay, I think this is a good consistency. We'll see if it's too thin or not. I doubt it. Oop. All right, so I'm gonna drizzle this over the top. Emphasis on over the top.
Wow.
I feel that well in the center there.
That's pretty.
Yeah, it is pretty, isn't it? And so simple, this cake. I mean, that took nothing at all to pull together. It just took a little time to bake the cake and let it cool. You definitely want the cake to cool because if you don't, you will wind up with, you know, icing that goes everywhere. Did that make sense? How does that look?
It looks pretty.
Okay, and then just to adorn the top, since this is a special occasion after all, this dinner is for Lad Drummond. I haven't actually determined whether he's going to be at dinner because I don't know where he is today. He's out on the ranch, working the land, but I'll have dinner all ready for him whenever he does show up. So on top, I'm doing mini chocolate chips just to drive home that chocolate point. But look at these. I found these cute little bright red. They're basically like vanilla chips, but they're red colored. But aren't they cute?
So cute.
This is such a special looking dessert and really didn't take that much effort. That is my kind of bacon right there. Cute.
Strawberry lemon cheesecake bars. And guess what? It's no bake. It's cold, refreshing. 1 box of vanilla wafers in a bag. And I'm crushing the vanilla wafers because it's going to be the buttery crust for the strawberry lemon bars. All right. I'm melting 1.5 sticks of butter. It's a lot of butter, but hey, you're making a cheesecake bar. You can't skimp on the butter. While that's melting, I'm gonna grab a lemon and some sugar. I'm zesting a half a lemon, so I wanna kick that lemon flavor up a notch. You know, now that I think of it, house names like Marty's are pretty common in my family. My grandmother's brother, his name was John Robinson, but we called him Snooky. Have no idea why we called him Snooky, but I always addressed him as Uncle Snooky. House name. So I've added 3 tablespoons of sugar. I'm gonna add that hot butter directly to those crushed vanilla wafers. I'm gonna add a heavy pinch of salt. This crust is so versatile. You can use it in a key lime pie. If you're making some type of like baked fruit, like grilled peaches, you can add it as a quick crumble. And I actually make a baked banana pudding cheesecake. And of course, banana pudding has vanilla wafers, so use a vanilla wafer crust. All right, that looks great. That is the bomb.com. I'm just gonna press down till it's even and leveled. And I've added the parchment paper to make it easy to pull out once it's done. Alrighty, so my crust is in the freezer. I'm gonna get started on my cheesecake filling. I'm using, which is important, room temp cream cheese. I've tried to take the shortcut and not get this cream cheese at room temp, and it does not work. You won't get that nice and fluffy cream cheese filling if you use cold, mildly cold cream cheese. All right, so I'm using about 24 ounces. Here's why I love this no-bake recipe. It's summertime, it's hot. Who wants to turn on their oven in the summertime? I mean, here in Charleston, it's 100 degrees, past 100 degrees. It's hot. I'm not turning that oven on. I'm gonna beat my softened cream cheese till it gets fluffy with a little volume. So I'm gonna stop the process right now. A little bit of lemon zest. 2 teaspoons vanilla extract. All right, get this going again. That looks good to me. It's nice and fluffy. Nice and silky and smooth. It's doubled in size, got a little bit of volume in there. Ready to add my lemon juice. 2 teaspoons, 2 cups, confectioner's sugar. Add it in 1 cup at a time. So I've made this recipe before for my mom and she loved it. The boys haven't tried it yet and I'm pretty sure they're gonna love it too. All right, I'm gonna add in the other cup, the final cup, confectioner's sugar. Get this started again. This is gonna be so light, so airy. Pop it in the fridge, take it out. Once it's chilled, it's gonna be cool, delicious, and refreshing. I'm gonna add in 1.5 cups of sour cream. It gives it that sharp tanginess and it just complements that lemon juice and lemon zest. Alrighty, pop this off. Fold in my whipped cream. And that's about 1 cup. Now because it's no bake, you want that nice, airy, melt in your mouth effect. And that whipped cream does that. In the time that it took me to make this, my crust has already set up. It's fluffy, it's creamy, and it's gonna taste so good once it's chilled. That is done. I'm gonna pop this in the fridge. I gotta cut up some strawberries for the garnish. Cut the top off, cut it lengthwise. Nothing special. And I love using strawberries, especially in the summertime. It just screams summer. They're nice and sweet and ripe, very easy. I mean, lemon and strawberry go hand in hand, like strawberry lemonade. Just place them down. You can get fancy and create a little pattern. If you don't want to do a pattern, that's okay too. I'm putting on the strawberries now instead of when I refrigerated it because strawberries tend to get really, really watery once it sets. These will not get watery at all. I've zested a lemon and add that right on top. I'm gonna make sure I cut between the strawberries. I will eat this by myself, but I have to share. Y'all ready for dessert?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that is good.
That looks excellent.
There you go. Look at that.
Oh, that's good.
I'm making my black and pink cookies, which are soft and cakey and covered in rich chocolate and fruity strawberry glazes. To get started, I'm gonna make up my cookie batter. I'm gonna combine 3 cups of all-purpose flour, and then 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and a teaspoon of kosher salt. My dry is combined. I'll get 3/4 cup of butter in my mixing bowl, and I'll add 1.5 cups of sugar. And now one thing that every black and white cookie needs is a little bit of lemon flavor. It plays so nicely with the vanilla, so I'll add the zest of half of a lemon. I'll get this onto the mixer and beat it until it's fluffy. While this mixes, I'll grab 3 eggs and some yogurt to tie everything together. And I'm gonna add my eggs 1 at a time, making sure each one is fully incorporated before adding the next. The batter's looking beautiful already. I'm gonna add a tablespoon of vanilla extract, and now I'm gonna add the dry ingredients, alternating with 3/4 cup of whole milk yogurt. I'm gonna reduce the mixer to low, and then I'm gonna add 1/3 of the dry ingredients, followed by 1/3 of the yogurt, and the next third, and the next third, and the next third. So once this dry ingredients batch is mostly mixed in, I'm gonna add 1/4 cup of yogurt. This is whole milk plain yogurt, not Greek yogurt. This is just about fully mixed. I'm gonna turn the mixer off, and now I'm ready to scoop. I've got a couple of baking sheets lined with parchment so that the cookies don't stick. And then I'm gonna grab my ice cream scoop, which I love to use for these, and I'll add a scoop right onto my baking sheet, just like that. A perfectly round plop is what I like to see. And then I'm gonna keep on scooping. These are gonna go in the oven now at 350 degrees for 14 to 16 minutes until the bottoms are just starting to turn brown. My cookies are ready to come out of the oven. Oh, these smell heavenly. These look so good and perfectly puffy. I'm gonna let these cool now while I whip up my dueling glazes. These are kind of like the hip younger sibling to the traditional black and white cookie. So 2 glazes, 2 bowls. They're both gonna start with 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, a pinch of salt. I like to add a tablespoon of light corn syrup. And then some of my whole milk yogurt is gonna bring the glaze together. And it'll add more of that tanginess. I'm gonna start with 3 tablespoons of yogurt. This type of glaze is really all about fine-tuning the consistency. Now for the pink glaze, I'm gonna blend up 1/4 cup of freeze-dried strawberries. I'll blend these until a very fine powder. Oh yeah, strawberries smoke. I'll pour this right into one of the bowls. And then for the chocolate glaze, I'll add a 1/4 cup of cocoa powder. And I'll mix them until they're smooth. I'm obsessed with the natural pink color that the strawberries add. That's the consistency that I'm looking for. It's thick, but still spreadable. Let me mix up the chocolate glaze now. This chocolate looks great. It's glossy and thick. It's time for the best part, the decorating. So I'll take a little of my strawberry glaze and then smooth it over 1/2 of the cookie. And for this lighter glaze, it's okay to go a little bit past that equator line because the chocolate can go over it. And that's actually the best bite when you go to bite with both glazes layered on the cookie. Oh, for doubly cute. I'll keep on prettying these up. Dun, dun, dun. I've got to try one immediately. I love these. They're so dense and cakey.
Double chocolate bread pudding. I love bread pudding. Love it. But I gotta tell you, even if you're not into bread pudding, just if you are into chocolate, check into the Double Chocolate Bread Pudding Hotel. Because it's really good. You should try it. And then maybe you can tell me if it's the best thing I ever made. I'm gonna get working on the really easy custard here. It's a typical custard. You've got your eggs, start adding in some Loaf, a little bit of chocolate syrup, a regular old Hershey's. This is double chocolate bread pudding. Add a little pinch of salt, kind of brings out the sweetness. Some brown sugar, some cinnamon, a little bit of fresh nutmeg. Now it's time to add in the milk. And then let's just talk about the bread part. Croissants and cinnamon raisin bread. Usually bread pudding is made from day-old whatever bread. My recipe does not require day-old bread because when I want my double chocolate bread pudding, I want it now, and I'm not gonna wait a day. Every once in a while, I'll order these par-baked croissants, and I leave them in my freezer. And croissants, flaky, buttery, perfect for a bread pudding. Cut them all down to size into about 1-inch chunks. Look at that. Come on. It already has everything you want in it. I'm using cinnamon raisin bread. 2 reasons. 1, it was in the fridge at the time. And 2, it's got the raisins, which harkens me back to my favorite bread pudding, which is down at Mother's in New Orleans. And it's got a swirl of cinnamon. So I'm getting like 2 ingredients in one. I'm gonna sprinkle over some of my chocolate chips. It's just chocolate, 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 which is good. And this is the most important part, if you ask me. It's not pour and go. It's pour, press, press, pour, press, press, press. Let it soak up. Give it like 10 minutes. And it's time to make the topping. You cannot leave this soft because it really adds lots of crunch and flavor. So the topping is really easy. It's just flour, butter, sugar, pecans. And now this is the kicker. This is flaky sea salt for texture and for the salt content. Kind of squish everything together. Just sprinkle it over the top of the custard, get it into the oven. It's time to make some whipped cream. Bourbon, that is. Oh yeah. You have to have bourbon whipped cream. I'm gonna add in some heavy cream. I'm aerating, it's gonna create volume, and that creates whipped cream. Add in a little bit of sugar. Add in some bourbon. They say you're not supposed to cook with it if you wouldn't drink it. I need a little bit more. All right, so there you have it. Best thing I ever made? Check. Deserves a red plate. When I was growing up, we had 1 red plate. To eat off that 1 red plate, you're pretty special. And when I do something good, I serve myself on a red plate. Oh, the smells. It's just the toasted pecan smell and the cinnamon. Like, do a huge dollop of my bourbon whipped cream right over the top. This is the best part. When you eat it fresh out of the oven, you put that whipped cream on it, and the whipped cream just starts to melt and cascade over the side there.
So, chocolate mousse. So I'm gonna start by making chocolate curls to put on top of the finished mousse. So I'm making some kind of marbled chocolate curls. So I have some white chocolate that I melted with some coconut oil and some darker chocolate, semi-sweet, that I also melted with coconut oil. And that just kind of helps keep it nice and smooth. And then when you go to make the curls, it actually curls instead of breaks. At least I hope that's what happens. So I drizzled on both colors of chocolate, and I'm just gonna use a spatula to spread it into a thin layer. Okay, so Alex, if you'll look and see, you can kind of see a hint of the marbling underneath. But what I need to do now is stick this in the freezer, so come back around.
Okay.
So I'm gonna put the chocolate for the curls into the freezer. Okay, so while that chills just for a couple of minutes, I'm going to whip some cream, heavy cream, in a bowl, and I'll start kind of slow. And while I whip it, I'm just gonna sweeten it by adding some regular sugar. You can use powdered sugar. You can use agave syrup if you're into that kind of thing. All right, I'm gonna whip this cream until stiff peaks start to form. All right, let's take a look. I think that whipped cream looks great. So let's take a look. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to get sort of a sharp instrument, whether it's a bench scraper or a spatula. Basically, you want to scrape, and then the curls should happen sort of naturally. And of course, we're not talking about smooth, beautiful curls, but look at that. You can see sort of the little marble quality. And try another one. And you can do long, so look at this, Alex. Here's where it's gonna really start to kind of cooperate. See? And they're just little cute curls. And the great thing about these is if you're having like a dinner party, you can make them ahead of time. So I'm gonna keep going until I get all of this chocolate curled. All right, finished them up. That's the last batch. See, you know what Socrates always said?
No.
No two chocolate curls are exactly alike.
Wow, I don't think you ever said that.
Profound.
I'm gonna pop this plate in the freezer so these don't soften. I'll be right back. Now I'm actually gonna make the chocolate mousse. So I've got some egg yolks and I'm gonna add some vanilla. And then I'm gonna beat the yolks. Okay, this is all mixed together. So now I've got a mixture of semi-sweet chocolate and butter that I've had on a double boiler. And that double boiler has done its work. So I'm gonna temper the egg yolks by just adding a little bit of the hot chocolate butter mixture and whisking it. And this, of course, just brings the egg yolks to temperature. And so then when I add it into the rest of the chocolate, it doesn't turn into scrambled egg chocolate, which never ever sounds good. So here we go. And I always do it slowly and just stir the whole time. Okay, so look at this, Alex. Got that all stirred together. Looks great. Ooh, that bowl is hot. So now I'm gonna take about 3/4 of this whipped cream and fold it in. Now you can't rush the folding process at all. You need to take your sweet time and just do it gradually. So give me probably about 2 minutes and this will all be ready to go. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there and then I'm gonna doctor up the whipped cream just a little bit that I'm gonna put on top of the chocolate mousse. And I don't wanna totally mix this. I want it to be marbled. You're tempted to keep mixing, but you wanna stop when it just starts to marble. Okay, so now it's time to serve. I'm just gonna build one. You fill up the cup, and then you get the whipped cream with all the marbled, beautiful raspberry jam. I never said what I put in the whipped cream, did I? No, you didn't. Okay, and look at that. Oh, now I'm gonna get the other 3 built just like this one. All right, they're all assembled. The only thing missing are the chocolate curls. Okay, so the chocolate curls go on. You can save the curls. I like to get them really like jagged and shardy. Look at this, Alex. What do you think?
These are gorgeous.
When I bought Barefoot Contessa from Diana Estrada in 1978, she was famous for her chocolate cheesecake. I looked through my old files and dug out the recipe. I'm gonna make it for her for lunch. I think she'll be really surprised. So the first thing I wanna do is make the crust. I need 10 graham crackers. I'm just gonna break them up into the food processor. This is just a classic graham cracker crust with a little bit of cinnamon added to it. Just process them. You want them really finely ground. Okay, teaspoon of cinnamon. Cinnamon and chocolate is a great combination. And some melted butter, about 5 tablespoons. Just gonna pour it right into the food processor. Just give it a blitz. Put it into a 9-inch springform pan. I'm going to just press this right into the pan. I'm going to bake at 350 degrees for 12 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to make the filling. Perfect. Can't make chocolate cheesecake without chocolate. So I'm going to do 5 ounces of bittersweet chocolate. Just going to melt it. Best way to melt chocolate is to just chop it up in small pieces. You don't want to overheat it, otherwise it'll taste bitter and sort of burnt. So just shave it like this. When I melt chocolate, I actually melt it a little under melted because the heat just continues to melt the chocolate. So into a double boiler, it's basically a dish over a pan of simmering water, not boiling. And then to give it more flavor, and this is interesting because it must have been Diana's original idea to add coffee to chocolate. Really makes a difference. So it's a tablespoon of instant espresso powder. I'm just gonna let that hang out there. You know, when I first bought Barefoot Contessa, I remember this cake so vividly because it was incredibly expensive that we used to sell it by the inch. I don't know why. I think it was $40. It's sort of like from 1978, it would be like a cake being $150 now. We closed the door one night. There was nothing left in the store except this one cake, and somebody knocked on the door and said, I need something for dessert, I need something chocolate. And I said, all I have is this one cake, it's incredibly expensive, it's $40. I was really embarrassed. And they said, we'll take it. And I thought, I like this business, this works for me. So this is just melted now. And I think the crust is all ready. Perfect, you can smell the cinnamon. Okay, now, next thing I need for the filling is 1 3/4 pounds of cream cheese. It has to be at room temperature. That's 8. It's a big cake. 1 cup of sugar. 1/4 cup of cornstarch. Teaspoon of good vanilla extract. 1/4 teaspoon of almond extract. And just mix that together. I'm just gonna whip this on medium-high speed until it's light and fluffy. Okay, next are the eggs, 3 eggs. Oh, this is perfect, it's nice and light. So now I'm gonna add the eggs 1 at a time. If the cream cheese isn't room temperature, it'll never incorporate the eggs. Next thing is 1/2 cup of sour cream. And now for the cool chocolate. You want to make sure the chocolate is completely cool. Otherwise you'll scramble the eggs in the cake. That's not pretty. So just on very low speed. This is such a decadent dessert. I think maybe I'll give Diana what's left over to take home. That's it. So just like most cheesecakes, this cake bakes in 2 parts. First part is 350 degrees for an hour. And then I'm going to open the oven door and let it cool in the oven for an hour and a half. That really prevents it from cracking. So it cools very slowly. This is about as decadent as it gets. Just smooth it out. And as if this isn't decadent enough, I'm gonna make some warm chocolate ganache and drizzle it over to the cake. It's gonna be so good. And next, I'm gonna make Diana's classic carrot salad. In 1978, when I bought Barefoot Contessa, one of the most popular desserts that Diana Strata made was this chocolate cheesecake. It has lots of espresso in it, has great flavor. And I thought, I'm just gonna turn up the volume a little bit and add a drizzle of chocolate ganache. I'm chopping up 1/4 pound of bittersweet chocolate. I've got a double boiler that I made with a glass bowl and simmering water. So put the chocolate right in. Okay. 1/4 cup of heavy cream, and just heat those together just until the chocolate melts. Ganache is great for icing chocolate cakes, but it's also terrific if you want to drizzle on a dessert. If you haven't, drizzle it on the plate, but for this, I'm just going to drizzle it on the top of the chocolate cheesecake. Here's the cake. Doesn't that look great? I'm just going to take a spoon and just drizzle it on. Right across. Well, I would say dessert is done.
A Black Forest chocolate cake for 2. This is so rich and delicious. I'm just using frozen pitted cherries, and I'm gonna make sort of a syrupy cherry mixture. So I'll add a 1/4 cup of sugar, and then I'm gonna break out the hard stuff. Lad and I are gonna party. A couple of tablespoons of cherry liqueur, and then I'm gonna turn on the stove and make sure the sugar is all mixed up with the liqueur. So I'm gonna bring it to a gentle boil and let it cook for about 6 minutes until it's reduced and thick. Now the cake I'm making also has a lot of delicious cream, so I'm gonna go ahead and whip it. I'm adding a cup of really cold cream to the mixer, along with a 1/4 cup of powdered sugar and a splash or 2 of vanilla. And then I'll turn on the mixer, and I'm gonna whip the cream until it has stiff peaks. Okay, the cream is all whipped, the cherries are all cooked. The cake is baked and completely cooled and ready to layer up. But before I do that, let me tell you how I made it. There are 5 steps to making the cake. First, the dry mix, and that's a cup of all-purpose flour, a cup of sugar, and a pinch of salt stirred together. Second, the wet mix, and for this, I poured a 1/4 cup of buttermilk into a pitcher, added 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, a large beaten egg, and mixed everything together. Then third, this is the chocolate mix, and it's a stick of salted butter and 2 heaping tablespoons of cocoa powder. I whisked them together in a pan, added 1/2 cup of water, brought it to a boil, and cooked it for 10 seconds. Then step 4 is where it all comes together. So I poured the chocolate mixture over the dry mixture and stirred it for a minute to cool, added the egg mix, and stirred it until it was all smooth. Finally, step 5. With the batter done, it was all about baking. So I poured the batter into a 1/4 sheet pan lined with parchment. Then I put it into a 350-degree oven for 15 minutes, then took it out and let it cool completely. Okay, now I get to turn this chocolate cake into a beautiful layered Black Forest cake. So I'm gonna turn it out onto the cutting board and peel off the parchment. And then I'm gonna cut this cake into 4 equal pieces. So I'll cut it in half, and then I'll cut each half in half. I'm gonna get the cake stand. So then I'm gonna grab some cream, probably about 1/4 of the cream. This is gonna be such a cute little layer cake. I am very excited. And then I'll spread the cream to the edges. You don't have to be perfect. All right, so I'll just grab a few cherries at a time and drop them on top of the cream. Okay, and then the next layer of cake. And I'm actually putting the cake upside down. It just kind of makes it a little bit more stable. Look at that cherry syrup pouring out of the side of there. So pretty. Okay, another fourth of cream. Okay. You see where I'm going with this, right? Some more of the cherries. You could have some fun and do blackberries or blueberries instead of cherries. Another layer. And there goes the cherry juice. I'm in heaven just putting this together. I'm gonna grate on some chocolate. You can do chocolate curls if you're feeling fancy. You can do colored sprinkles. Anything goes. Okay, that looks so good.
I'm making a strawberry pie.
Strawberry pie?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Strawberry pie.
Yeah, when he speaks with a southern accent, it's gonna be good.
To start off, we have a store-bought, yes, I know, crust. But it's beautiful.
I mean,
Why not?
what?
I'm just
It's
shocked that
summertime.
you usually have, you know.
You know, it's summer. We want to spend a little less
Yes.
time in the kitchen with our guests. They're
And they're
more
delicious, too.
Is that pie blind baked?
Yes, it is. So we have 3.5, 4 pounds of strawberries. What I've done is I've cut a few in a different way. So what I like to do is bake a strawberry base that I'm going to cook slightly, and then have some fresh strawberries that I've marinated to add when they're cold. So you get a different texture of strawberries.
Interesting.
See, Jeezy, that's why it's okay for you to use the store-bought shortcut of the pie crust because you're making the pie filling, and a lot of people
Exactly.
would do both.
All right, we have the strawberries here. So these strawberries are just quartered. We have some that are diced. And into the diced strawberries, we're going to reserve these. I'm going to put elderflower, liqueur,
I love
a
that.
little sugar
Yeah.
to let them marinate. 5, 10 minutes, that's it.
Why do you like the elderflower with this?
I just love the
Describe the flavor of it.
It's hard to describe. It's like a purple rain, you know?
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay,
man.
Paisley Park.
Look at
You know
this.
that gorgeous sort of floral, you're in the fields after.
No,
covers
stick
your
with purple
whole
rain. I think the
everything.
whole world just
Purple rain,
understood.
people.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just gonna toss it like that, let it sit, and we've sliced them fresh for the top. These we're gonna put in a pan, just like this, okay?
You know my
Okay.
theory about strawberries?
What?
No matter how many times you look when you're chopping them, there's gonna be a leaf.
Right?
There is
Yeah.
sugar,
You eat it.
It's
cornstarch,
not a big theory,
You
it's
eat
just a
it.
theory. Yeah,
sugar, cornstarch, just about 3.5 tablespoons, and strawberry jam, just to get a little density to it, and fresh lemon juice. You're gonna let that cook for about 15, 20 minutes, not a lot of time. But you don't want to denature the strawberry too much. And what's gonna happen is it's gonna look like this. Can you see this?
Oh, God. They want some vanilla ice cream.
Denature meaning you don't want it to be mushy. You still want some integrity.
Color's still there.
Oh,
It's
look
not.
at
It's,
Look at that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay. So now to get that extra zhuzh, you know, we're gonna like make it like special. We're gonna take these beautiful marinated strawberries and we're gonna fold it in to the cooked strawberries. So
I
we have
like that.
3 kinds of strawberries: cooked, sliced, and raw. And just like this. Okay. It's a very simple dessert. Make sure at this stage it must be cold.
Okay.
Don't want to put the strawberries that are fresh into warm. It just kills the whole point of it. All right? And then we're going to put it into our crust. Oh,
That is
Luscious.
bright.
beautiful.
Bright.
Okay, yeah, would it be?
With a B. This goes in the fridge. Probably 3, 4 hours. You want to get it nice and cold. All right, I have one here that I've done a little earlier. Okay. And then the next step is some decoration. This has absolutely nothing to do with flavor, it's just decoration. Okay, so we're gonna
Oh,
take
the
some very
fridge is
thinly
open
sliced
behind you.
strawberries.
Hey,
I'm gonna go around like
you
this.
don't live in a. You don't live. I got it.
You're rich.
You're doing that. I got.
Thank
hey,
you.
Don't worry.
Thank you,
I got you.
You're gonna go in circles, just spiral all the
Concentric
way.
circle, spiral, I have one done.
Oh, look at this.
all
guy.
right.
Thank you.
Hold on.
Hold on. So many pies laying
I
around.
count 3 pies. I'm doing pie mouth right now.
1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Back in the fridge, and that's what it looks like.
Oh, come on.
It's like a diner, almost a little diner.
Beautiful.
Put it. You left
I
it
love
open
this
again,
fridge
Stunad. Come on.
No, my fridge guy's off tonight. So
I got a fridge guy.
I got a fridge guy. Okay.
Who doesn't? Are we the
Who
only
doesn't,
ones?
exactly. Okay, so you ready? You ready? Who's tasting this?
Both.
Both.
So you don't want to do this when the strawberries are not fresh, because that's the point of it all.
You've ever heard of like the strawberry pretzel pie in the South?
Pretzel?
Oh, it's crazy, yeah. Pretzel
Yeah,
crust,
I think I've read about it before,
a little
but
bit of cream cheese in there.
that's as far as I got. First pie slice.
First pie slice. It's like a first crepe, you know?
I tell you, you bring this to the potluck this summer, the barbecue, the dance marathon.
Yep.
Got a couple of them about to hit up this summer. You are gonna be the star.
I'm gonna get another slice. This
I'll
is
take
boy.
the first slice, Jeezy. I don't mind
a little
the first
stickage,
one.
but it's okay.
We believe in you.
Oh, look at that.
Wow.
Little vanilla cream.
What kind of little chantilly cream? You got a little
Chantilly
vanilla?
Skillet chocolate cakes. I'm just sizzling some butter in a saucepan. I'm actually making the icing first because I want to give it time to cool. So to the butter, I'll add 3 tablespoons of cocoa, and they're rounded tablespoons. And then some milk. And I'm gonna whisk this together until it starts to gently bubble. Okay, this chocolate mixture is good to go. So now I just have to mix all of this in with a whole bunch of sifted powdered sugar. So it literally just goes right in. All right, this icing is done. Everything's mixed together. So I'm gonna sit it over here to the side, let it cool while I get the cake going. I can almost make this in my sleep. It is so simple. So the dry ingredients come first, and that is flour and sugar, equal parts, and a pinch of salt. And I'll stir the dry ingredients together, and then I'll mix the wet ingredients in a separate pitcher. And it's buttermilk, a little splash of vanilla, baking soda, and an egg. And then I'll beat this together. All right, so that's the dry ingredients, the wet ingredients, and now I'll make the chocolate mixture for the cake. Lots of chocolate in this recipe. So I've got another saucepan of melted butter, and I'm adding 2 tablespoons of cocoa. This is very deep, rich, unsweetened cocoa. And I have some boiling water hanging out, and then it gets poured in, and I'll turn the heat up and whisk it just until it starts to boil. I like to pour this mixture into the dry ingredients just to cool down the chocolate. So even just a few stirs kind of gets rid of that heat a little bit. So now comes the buttermilk egg mixture. And I'll just kind of stir gradually as it gets worked in. So now I'm gonna pour it into individual iron skillets. So I'll just pour an equal amount of batter in each skillet. Okay, these cakes are gonna bake at 350 degrees for about 10 minutes. So the cakes are out of the oven. They look incredible, deep, rich, and chocolatey. And I have the cooled icing in a piping bag. So evenly distribute it among the cakes. So with regular sheet cake, pecans go in the icing itself, but I like to also...
It's a hidden heart cake, all right?
Okay.
So these are really popular if you look online.
Oh, spill cakes.
We've got a viewer who has sent us a picture of one of hers. This is Sarah at Color Me Apple on Instagram. So she made this chocolate and strawberry hidden heart cake for her mother's birthday. So I'm gonna show you how to make a different version. This is a heart cake, but an ice cream heart cake. So Jeff, I'm gonna have you help me. You are gonna do the wet ingredients first.
You laughing at over there?
All right, so we've got 3/4 cup of butter in there. You're gonna add to it 1.5 cups of sugar, 2 eggs, and some vanilla. And then I like to use the coloring gel because it gives you a little bit more potent of a color. If you're gonna use liquid, just put a little extra. It takes 1 whole teaspoon of this to really give it that bright red color. I'm gonna do the dry ingredients now. So I've got flour here, baking powder, and salt. And just gonna whisk that together.
Jeff, is that organic food coloring?
Yeah, you know, that's the thing. There's a misconception that food coloring is bad for you, but
No.
they make very good, you know.
I'm not kidding. We use there's a really good...
Yeah, you got,
And you know
don't be
what? We're
afraid.
not
It's
eating it
festive
every
and
day.
fun.
No,
You know?
of course not.
No, you gotta have that.
You add that to it, and then add these dry ingredients to the wet.
Lucky you're wearing white today.
Yeah, I know.
I should
Oh,
have
good
given
luck,
you.
Jeff.
Don't
I
splash.
should have given you an apron for
Oh,
this.
my red jean jacket.
Yeah. You know,
You have so many.
all right, I have a quarter sheet pan and I've lined it with some parchment paper and also sprayed it with a nonstick spray. So when you're ready, you'll take that and just push it right into the pan.
Very
You want
sweet.
something that's a little on the
Yeah.
firmer side for this so that it holds up within the cake.
I would want to get my hands in that so bad to mix it with my hands, right?
It is a
That's
great
okay.
color.
Really get a mess.
Yeah. That's a
That's a
beautiful
beautiful
batter.
All right, I'll take care of this, Jeff. I don't want you to mess yourself up here. So you just pat it in.
See?
Very, very good, Jeff. Wash
All right.
those hands on
No,
there.
we're good. You want me to use my hands for that? I don't know.
Do you want to?
Why not?
Okay, so pat it into the pan, get it nice and even, and then put it in the oven for me at 350 for about 20 minutes.
350 for 20 minutes. You got
Yeah.
it. It's going in. I'm going to set the timer
All
right
right,
now.
put it in. And then after it cools off, I take a little heart cookie cutter and cut this. So you're gonna need about 12 of these
Do the
little
other
hearts.
side, maybe. Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
oh, look
there
at
we
that.
go. So you get your little hearts, and then take them and start stacking them together.
Oh, I get it.
So we're gonna stack
I get it.
and make
Oh,
a log.
it's a
So
railroad.
Jeff, if you'll get out I have some softened vanilla ice cream, and then in the freezer, I've taken a loaf pan. This is an ice cream cake, my favorite kind. So you take a loaf pan, line it with plastic wrap, and then put just a little bit of ice cream in there. And you just spread it out and freeze it so it gets nice and hard. 10, 11, and you kind of push them together so they stay together. 12. Now, Jeff, if you'll spoon a little bit more of the softened in here
Okay.
on top of the frozen. So the little soft bit will help this
Something
then
else.
stay in place. Do you want this?
Yeah. So just a little bit on the.
Put a little bit in there and spread it out for me.
Okay.
So we have a nice
So we
base.
have. Okay, like this is
So
like.
this is how it's gonna
It's a
anchor
spackle,
in.
Jeff.
It's a
Yeah.
spackle. It's the concrete, the 9-gauge concrete.
And then don't throw these out because we're gonna use the crumbs
Ooh.
for a crust.
Ooh.
Okay, so take this very carefully
Oh, down.
and set it with the heart side down, the pointy side up.
Pointy
So it goes right in there. And kind of smush it in. Hold it together.
I'll keep the hearts in there.
Okay. And then softly spoon around.
There you go.
See?
That's not that hard, Jeff.
No, this is easy.
I'm gonna do
It's
this.
actually engineering. I think we're nestled in there.
You know, you could actually put a cake batter on there too, right?
Yeah.
A double cake
You could
batter.
just
Yeah.
double cake it. I mean, the interior might be a little.
There are all
Overdone.
different ways of doing it.
How about melted ice cream?
That's what I was
Hello?
thinking. I would melt it and pour it over the top.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Hey.
And then put it back in the freezer. I'm lazy. You know what
Word.
I'm saying?
So next step to this, you take all these extra little crumbles, really get them nice and crumbled up, and mix them with some little heart sprinkles.
Oh, yeah,
just
they're
like
in there.
that.
I see them.
Oh, they're already in there. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so you mix it all together with
Wow.
the crumbs. Take this
Why are you pretending?
and generously.
It's over for you. Just sit there and from in your ivory tower and judge our beautiful craft.
Generously pour it over the top.
It looks like this strawberry
that's gorgeous.
ice cream
Don't
bar.
have to clap yet. See, they love me. Now we take some plastic wrap, put it over the top, and push it in there so that everything is even.
It smells cakey
Okay.
delicious.
Then wrap it up tightly. This is gonna go back into the freezer. And you really wanna let this have time to set up. So it needs, I think, about 4 to 6 hours. Of course, you could do it overnight. So let's put it in. We've got one that's already done in
Oh,
here.
wow, that one. That one.
Here we go over here.
That one we did earlier when there wasn't as much pressure
Yeah,
from,
we didn't have
you
as
know,
much critique
sorry,
earlier.
in the American Idol judging panel over there.
It's a no for me, dog.
Now, normally when you're slicing an ice cream cake, you would dip this in hot water to give you cleaner slices. You don't want to do that because the ice cream starts to melt and bleed into the red heart.
Oh.
So it will mess it
Bleeding
up.
hearts.
Okay, Jeff, if you'll hold down the pan, I'm gonna pull this up, kind of loosen it a little bit. Okay, and then take this and let's flip it.
Padre, di Fili, Spiritu Santi.
Okay.
Eat pretty.
And you got to do this with the plastic. Oh, look at that. Turn right on. That's amazing. You can't really do that without the plastic wrap, too. Don't skip that step.
Right, plastic wrap's very important here. Okay, now it's the moment of truth. Now the first slice, you're gonna have to slice a little thicker to get into that heart. So I'm gonna go a little thicker on it.
Ooh.
We're getting there.
Getting there. Oh, yeah, you just hit the end. I see
it.
I'll take that end piece. I'm just a team player, and I'm all about...
Here we go.
Oh,
I'm gonna move this one out of the way.
It worked, Katie.
Look how pretty.
Oh, yeah, Katie. Do another one. Keep going. Oh.
Look at that.
All right, two Valentine Scrooges.
Sorry, I wasn't doubting you.
I knew it was gonna be beautiful. I was just trying to reverse engineer it to make it easier for my laziness at home, you know?
Too little, too late, Sonny and Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff. I'm gonna sit here and enjoy this cake.
You worked so hard.
All right. Oh, this is great. I'm trying to get some of that inside.
Yeah, right
Oh,
there.
look at that, like a hot knife through a heart cake.
Now, I got some frozen peaches that have, kind of thawed out a little bit. I'm getting these into the mix here. And what I'm gonna do is hit them with a little brown sugar and some regular white sugar. So look at those. Let's get a little bit of regular sugar in, about a 1/4 cup. And we'll get a little brown sugar in. So you get some of that nice kind of rich, deep molasses flavor. There we go. And a little bit of flour to kind of bind it together a bit. We're also going to be hitting some cornstarch in there. The flour kind of gets a little thick and a little opaque where the cornstarch kind of runs a little bit more clear. So get a little flour. And get a little lemon juice. And get some water in there too. So a little lemon juice goes down. Get a little water in here. Spoon, and where's my cornstarch? Okay, there we go. Kind of mix that up a little bit. Make it not quite a slurry, because that's not a ton of cornstarch. All right, now before I mix that in, I'm gonna get a little cinnamon down. There we go. Okay, so take this, kind of pour it around. Now this is gonna be the base of it. We got sugar, we got flour. This all right here could be made, we could be making peach pie for all I know. So he's gonna get poured in here. First things first, let's get in a little bit of oats. Maybe 3/4 of a cup. We'll get in some flour. There we go. Okay. We'll get in some brown sugar. Again, kind of the same, some of the same sweeteners that we had on the mix with the peaches. A little bit of both. And a little bit of white sugar. Same thing, about a 1/4 cup on that. I was dragging a bit there. Okay, gonna give a little pinch of salt into this piece. There we go. A little bit of cinnamon hiding there. You see, when I bake at home, I get everything out that I own. Okay, a little bit of cinnamon going downtown. Here we are. And then here's the kicker, a little fresh nutmeg. Get that. Got a zester, a little microplane here. And this, especially the fresh nutmeg, really makes it work. About a 1/4 teaspoon on that. There we are. All right. Now we get in some almonds. Toasting these would also be a nice little move to make. There we go. And we're gonna hit it with some cranberries. You know what, I'm kind of looking at this. I'm looking at the size of the dish. I'm gonna up my oats just a little bit. Just give a little bit more, and I'm just gonna hit a touch more flour in there too. Because depending on the size pan, when you're using a smaller dish, you don't have as much surface area to cover. I'm just gonna hit a little bit more in there. Now, here comes the key. I gotta debling for this. This is the key. Having a little room temperature butter that's been softened, and we're gonna kind of mix this in here. I'll just kind of break it up a little bit. Now we're gonna work this into here. Now, what it's gonna do, well, it's gonna work as a little bit of a binder, but it's also gonna kind of melt and help crisp things up. All right, here we go. Go down with some of this. All right. Okay, here we go, into the oven. It's at 450. I'm just gonna pop it in there right now at the 450. It's smoking hot, but what I'm gonna do is drop it down to 350. It'll still have some of that residual temperature. Now check this out. The peaches are cooked, kind of make a nice caramel sauce around it, and I got some crunchy topping, but the topping that's down into the peaches is a little bit soggy. So now that I want the crunch, I want extra crunch, I'm gonna take the rest of the crunchy topping and put it on top. This will sit on the existing crunchy topping, and I'll have lots of extra crunchy topping. Okay, that goes back in, a few more minutes, crunch that top up. Peaches tossed with cinnamon and sugar, then baked under a comfy blanket of oats, slivered almonds, dried cranberries, a little brown sugar. Oh, ain't she a peach?
Today I'm making my almond tarts, which have a buttery cookie shell and a dense nutty filling, and then they're covered with pink raspberry glaze. I'm gonna start by making the shell. I'll build it all in my food processor. I'm gonna start with 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 1/3 cup of sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. I'm gonna pulse the dry ingredients to combine, just a couple of times. I've got 3/4 cup of unsalted butter that's cold and cubed. I want it cold so that the tart stays light and crumbly. And I'll pulse it together to incorporate the dry ingredients until the butter is pea-sized. Looks good. And now I'll bring the dough together with 2 egg yolks. And I'm gonna reserve the egg whites for the filling, and the yolks will just make these nice and rich, in addition to all the butter. I'll plop in the 2 yolks, and I'll blend this together into a dough. And you know it's done when it starts to form a ball, just like this. I'll turn it out onto my counter and then pat it out into a disc. And grab my plastic wrap. I'll wrap this up tightly, and then it's gonna refrigerate for at least an hour, and then it'll make the most buttery, delightful tart shells. My dough has rested, and now I'll form my tart shells. I'm gonna dust my counter with a little flour so it doesn't stick. And I'm gonna roll it out until it's about 1/4 inch thick. This looks nice. I've got a standard cupcake tin that I've greased and a 3-inch biscuit cutter. And I'll cut out a circle. I'm gonna gently press it into the cupcake tin. And then because the 3 inches doesn't actually cover the full tin, I'm gonna use my fingers to press it so that the dough comes all the way up to the top. And this is gonna be the perfect holster for the almond filling. I'll continue to shape these, and then they're gonna set in the freezer while I make my filling. This filling is moist and dense. It is a killer texture party with the tarts. I start with 1 cup of almond flour, 3/4 cup of sugar, a little salt, and 6 tablespoons of softened unsalted butter, the 2 egg whites that are reserved for making the tart shells, another full egg, and then a teaspoon of almond extract. And that's it. I'm gonna blend this until it's combined. That's smooth and perfect. I'll grab my shells now and fill them up. My tarts are frozen, which will help them maintain their shape in the oven. And I'll fill these guys up until the filling is 1/4 inch from the top, and that'll give them some space to puff up in the oven. Okay, these are gonna bake now at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes until the tops are lightly round. Oh yes! These have browned beautifully. I'm gonna let these cool while I make my raspberry glaze. This glaze is sweet and a little bit sour, and it's gonna make these tarts pop. And I'm using fresh raspberries. I'm gonna grab a sieve and a spatula, and I'm gonna press the raspberries through the sieve to get rid of any seeds. And this is essentially just gonna puree them. So I'm just smashing it and kind of using like a scraping motion to get all of the liquid through the sieve, but it'll catch the seeds. That way the glaze will be smooth. This looks great. I have a smooth pink raspberry puree in my bowl. I'll add a splash of almond extract and then 1 cup of powdered sugar. And I'll stir this up until the powdered sugar has completely incorporated and the glaze is smooth. This is looking really good. And I love this natural pink color. Oh yeah. This is a perfect consistency. To decorate, I'll spread the glaze over the top, like that, and I'm gonna sprinkle on some almonds. I'm just gonna add a tiny pinch of Tasteful sprinkles. Just a few. It'll be so pretty. I'm gonna decorate the rest, and I'll try not to eat them along the way. I'm gonna eat one. Flaky and buttery and crunchy on the outside.
Chocolate poke cakes. I'm adding chocolate chips to a double boiler, which is nothing more than a heat-proof glass bowl over a pan of simmering water. And then I'm gonna pour in sweetened condensed milk. This is already heating up, and this is just a good way to heat up any kind of chocolate mixture without burning the chocolate. So I took a big old shortcut with these poke cakes because I knew I had to make 2, and I used really good quality chocolate cake box mix. So here's how you make a poke cake. Watch this, Alex. You take a wooden spoon and you basically just poke it. So, the cakes are poked. I'm gonna check on the chocolate chip mixture. This really thin chocolatey mixture can you see?
Oh yeah.
Gets poured over the poke cake, and look, you want it to go into those holes. This looks like a dream. Gorgeous glossiness. But a proper poke cake, in my opinion, has some kind of frosting. So, it's not the most gourmet choice, but I'm gonna make a really yummy chocolate whipped topping, and I'm starting with 2 packages of chocolate instant pudding, and then to the pudding, I'll add some unsweetened cocoa powder. Trust me on this, it's so exciting. So this is instant pudding, and the glory of instant pudding is you just add milk, whisk it together, and then this is actually gonna thicken up into a luscious chocolate pudding. And I am gonna break out the non-dairy whipped topping. I softened it overnight in the fridge, and the great thing about this stuff is it's so easy. You don't have to whip cream and sugar. Get in here. Look. Oh, baby. So I will take half of this and you just smear this chocolate topping all over. All right.
So you got that oven occupied. The slow cooker is a fabulous way to make your desserts. I am going to make a slow cooker cobbler, and I'm using black cherries. I love using cherries in cobblers because they're so meaty and juicy. So I have some black cherries that I've thawed. I've reserved the juice from the cherries because I want to make a nice syrupy sauce with that. And that's a half a cup of granulated sugar, a quarter cup of cornstarch, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, a quarter teaspoon of nutmeg. I'm gonna give it a whisk, then add 3/4 cup of the reserved cherry juice. I decided to make a cobbler because what's more southern than a cobbler? And I thought it would be better to use the slow cooker so I can focus on everything else that I need to make. So you got that oven occupied. The slow cooker is a fabulous way to make your desserts. And as this gets nice and hot, it's gonna turn into this beautiful cherry syrup. And I'll pour this back into the slow cooker with those thawed cherries. Mix that around. All right, gotta make my topping. And I decided to just kind of lighten it up a bit. I'm using some reduced fat milk and a little less sugar than I normally use, but still great nonetheless. So for my dry ingredients, I'm using 1 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder. It's gonna be fluffy and airy. Half a cup of granulated sugar, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a quarter teaspoon of salt. Give it a whisk. All right, so I've mixed my dry. Now for my wet, 1 egg. And now I'm adding 2/3 cup of reduced fat milk. I have some melted butter. That's about 3 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter and a little vanilla extract. Give it a whisk. Break up that egg yolk. And now I'm going to add my wet to my dry to make my batter. Alrighty, so I'm gonna add my batter to the top of this. Okay, so I'm gonna cover this and cook it for about 2.5 to 3 hours on low. And when it comes out and it's nice and warm, I am gonna serve this with a scoop of ice cream.
I'm making these incredible raspberry baked Alaska. It starts with pound cake on the bottom and ice cream and sorbet in the middle, and then it's covered with meringue, and they're real showstoppers. What I have is 6 slices of pound cake. They're about 1/2 inch thick. I mean, you can make your own pound cake, but why would you? And I'm gonna take a 2.5 inch cutter, and I'm gonna cut a round out of each slice of pound cake. Just discard the edges. Okay, next is the ice cream. So I want a round scoop that's half raspberry sorbet and half vanilla ice cream. So I do half a scoop with vanilla, and then I just fill the rest of it with raspberry sorbet. I mean, how easy is that? I love raspberries and cream, so this is a good combination. See, the scoop and the cake are just the same diameter, so it makes it look really nice. Okay, that's one. Doesn't that look great? I'm gonna do 5 more and put them on a sheet pan. Okay, that's all 6. Isn't that great? So I'm just gonna freeze them for 30 minutes, just until they get nice and hard. And in the meantime, I'm gonna make Swiss meringue to put on the outside. It's so dramatic. There are 2 steps to the Swiss meringue. First, I'll heat 8 extra large egg whites in a heat-proof bowl set over a pan of simmering water. Add 1½ cups of sugar and whisk the mixture almost constantly until the sugar is dissolved and it reads 120 degrees on a candy thermometer. Then for step 2, I'll pour the mixture into the bowl of an electric mixer fitted with a whisk attachment. Add 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract, ½ teaspoon of cream of tartar, ½ teaspoon of salt, and beat it on medium speed for 1 minute. Then I'll turn up the speed and whisk it on high for 5 minutes until the egg whites form stiff, glossy peaks. So you take meringue and you put it on the outside. And this is my technique. I just take a little offset spatula, just like this, and just cover the entire thing with meringue. Just keep adding meringue. Make sure it's completely covered. Because remember, I'm gonna bake this. Okay, so you want big peaks, just like that, because that's what's gonna kind of brown when you put them in the oven. So now I'm gonna bake these, really hot temperature, 500 degrees, for 2½ to 3 minutes. You wanna watch them really carefully. And in the meantime, I'm gonna get the sauce for the baked Alaskas. So this is my fresh raspberry sauce. And the best part is, one of the key ingredients is store-bought. It's really straightforward to make. I put 6 ounces of fresh raspberries in a saucepan over medium heat, added ½ cup of sugar, ½ cup of water, brought it to a boil, lowered the heat, and simmered it for 4 minutes. Next, I poured the cooked raspberries into a food processor, added a cup of store-bought seedless raspberry jam, a tablespoon of raspberry liqueur, and processed it until it was smooth. Then I poured it into a container and put the lid on. So the jam adds so much flavor to this and texture, it's great. Okay, baked Alaska should be done. Whoa, how gorgeous are these? Woo! And a baked Alaska right on the top. Now, how gorgeous does that look? I mean, it's really restaurant food at home, but with store-bought ingredients, it's really easy.
For dessert, I'm making my tahini fudge pie, which has this really thick cookie crust, a fluffy filling, and then this layer of chewy fudge hiding in the middle. To get started, I'm gonna melt 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter. While this melts, I'll start blending my cookies. I've got 30 chocolate sandwich cookies. I'll also add a teaspoon of instant espresso powder, which just intensifies the chocolate flavor. I'll add a couple pinches of salt, and then I'll blend it to a fine crumb. All right, as this continues to blend, I'm gonna drizzle in the butter. Oh yeah, I've got a 9-inch pie plate here. I like a thick pie. I'll just pour the crust right in. I'll spread it out evenly. I wanna make sure it goes all the way up the sides and pack it firmly. I just love the texture of a firmly packed crust. Okay, this crust looks great. I'll stick it in the oven at 350 degrees for 6 minutes, and while that bakes, I'll get started on my decadent fudge. I'm gonna melt a stick of butter, then add 1 cup of sugar and 1 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder, a teaspoon of instant espresso powder to punch it up. I'll add a good pinch of salt to bring out all these flavors, and then ½ cup of heavy cream. We'll make it really rich and creamy. And stir to combine. Okay, this fudge is glossy and gorgeous. I'm gonna check if my pie crust is ready. Oh, it smells heavenly. I'm gonna add my layer of fudge now. I'll pour this right in, but I'm gonna save some to swirl on at the end. Oh yeah. This is gonna be the best surprise in the bottom of the pie. I'll let this set in the fridge and then work on my final step, the creamiest step, my tahini filling. This is a 1-bowl, no-bake filling that is good enough to eat by itself with a spoon. I'm gonna start with my tahini. I'll add 1½ cups. It adds that delicious sesame flavor. I'll also add 4 ounces of softened cream cheese for that delicious tanginess. 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, and then half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. A teaspoon of vanilla extract, and then a good pinch of kosher salt to bring out all these flavors. Okay, now that this is combined, I'm gonna add 1.5 cups of heavy cream. With my mixer on low, I'll drizzle this in. And then I'll increase my mixer and let it come to medium peaks. I'm gonna grab my pie shell. It's cooled and the fudge is firm. It's gonna be so nice and chewy. I'll pour in my tahini filling. Oh yeah, baby. I'm gonna grab my reserved fudge now, and then I'll drizzle this over the tahini filling. It's gonna be so pretty. I'm gonna do these luxurious marbly designs. You know what it needs? Flaky salt. Just for a little sparkly on top. Yes! Talk about pie perfection.
In my experience, the only thing kids like more than chocolate cake is a huge chocolate cake. So I'm gonna make a double fudge sheet cake for Lily and David Palmer, and I think they're gonna just love it. First, I need 2.5 cups of flour. This is all-purpose flour. Just wanna make sure there's no leavening in it. Okay, the next thing is cocoa powder. It's really important for good chocolate cake. Just choose a really rich cocoa powder. And I need 1.5 cups. I'm sifting all these ingredients. It's gonna combine them, and it's gonna make sure there are no little lumps in it. Next is 2¼ teaspoons of baking soda. You don't want a cake that's too light, and you don't want one that's too dense, just right, which is why I prefer, instead of using flour that has leavening in it, to do my own leavening. Half a teaspoon of salt. It's really important, particularly for chocolate cake. I'm just gonna sift this all together. That cocoa powder smells so good. There are little bits in the bottom of the sieve. Just run your fingers along it. Sort of push it through the sieve. And you get every single bit. Wonderful. Okay, next, butter and sugar. We need 1/2 pound of unsalted butter. That's 2 sticks. It's really important that it's room temperature butter because it really just makes a light and fluffy cake. I need a cup of granulated sugar. And a cup of brown sugar. Brown sugar is really granulated sugar with some molasses added. So 1 cup of brown sugar right in. But what it does is give a little extra depth of flavor. I'm just gonna let that cream together on medium speed for about 3 to 4 minutes until it gets really light and fluffy, and then it absorbs all the other ingredients. So next I'm gonna get the eggs ready. And these should be room temperature too. I never crack an egg on the bowl because otherwise you just get eggshell in the bowl. And nobody needs a crunchy eggshell. Okay, that's 3. I'm just gonna add them one at a time until they get really absorbed into the butter and sugar mixture. Okay, that's 3 eggs. This would be a great time to give the bowl a scrape, make sure it's really well mixed. So just turn it off and just scrape down the edges of the bowl. The key to making a cake is make sure it's really well mixed so you don't end up with a lot of flour in one place and a lot of butter in another place. And actually even the beaters, because sometimes they get a little jammed up. Okay, that looks good. This is looking really nice and creamy. It's wonderful. The next ingredient is vanilla. I love good vanilla. 3 teaspoons of good vanilla. Okay, next the wet ingredients. First thing is buttermilk. Buttermilk's actually low-fat milk that has a culture added, so it's very thick. My grandparents used to drink it. I think it's disgusting, but it's fabulous in cakes. So I need 1.5 cups of buttermilk. Sour cream also keeps the cake really moist. So I need 3/4 cup of sour cream. That's half, a little extra. And the last thing is coffee. Coffee, chocolate, I always talk about how they go together. And I have some left over from breakfast. So 3 tablespoons of coffee, brewed coffee. If you don't have freshly brewed coffee, you can just make a little bit of instant coffee. Brewed coffee always tastes so much better. Just gonna give it a little whisk so it's mixed together. So I have my dry ingredients, I have the wet ingredients, and I have the butter and sugar mixture. This is a classic thing to do for a cake to keep it light and moist. It's on low speed. I'm just gonna add the dry ingredients first and the wet ingredients alternating. Really slowly. And that way it keeps the batter very light. If you put all the dry ingredients in first, it would get really dense. If you put all the wet ingredients in first, it would be too thin. The whole kitchen smells like chocolate already. Perfect. This is called a half-sheet pan. It used to be you could only find it in restaurant supply places, but now almost every cookware store has it. What I did is I buttered and floured it first. You want to flour it and then tap out the flour so you don't have excess flour in the pan. Just push the batter to the corners and make sure it's really even. So this is going to go into the oven 350 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes, just until it springs back and the cake tester comes out clean. One of the best things about a cake this size is it's kind of like this blank canvas. I'm going to get all kinds of fabulous candies and the kids can decorate it. Now, how fun is that going to be? Can't wait to see this one. This looks like amazing frosting. Wow. It's so good, and it's easy to make. I'll show you how. First, start by making ganache. Melt 24 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate chips in a bowl over a pan of simmering water. Add 1.5 cups of heavy cream. Stir it once in a while until you have really smooth, melted chocolate. Then with the heat off, add 2 tablespoons of light corn syrup. This makes it really shiny. To give the chocolate depth of flavor, I add a half teaspoon of good vanilla. It makes such a difference. Then this is really important. Allow it to cool completely to room temperature before you go on. Pour it into a mixer fitted with a whisk attachment and add a half a stick of room temperature butter and whisk it all together until it becomes a really thick, rich, delicious chocolate frosting. It just takes a few minutes. So I've got a cooled cake, lots of buttercream frosting, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask the kids to decorate it. I mean, is this double chocolate or what? The whole key to this is to make it look really kind of rough and homemade, which of course it is. This is called a palette knife, but you can also use a dinner knife if you don't have one. And just smooth it out. I actually think buttercream was originally invented to keep the cake moist. It sort of acts as a sealer. So you want to make sure it goes right to the edge. You want something very earthy, very simple, big swirls. And it's just the base for the candy that the kids are going to decorate it with.
We're gonna go back to basics and make a chocolate cake with chocolate frosting. In here, I have 3 sticks of unsalted butter and 2 cups of sugar. I'm adding the eggs, 6 of them, one by one. Add them in a little bit. And with that, when you are done with your shenanigans, 4 teaspoons of vanilla. The dry ingredients, 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1.5 cups of cocoa powder. We're going deep on the cocoa in this.
Love this.
That's for the flavor. Don't sift salt. It generally doesn't go through the sifter. Add it in at the last minute to your wet ingredients.
Now the fun
Do you
part.
sift all your cocoa powders and flours when you bake a cake?
You know what? I do. It does fluffen and lighten. That's a verb, to fluffen.
Yes, it
okay?
is.
I know it's annoying.
It's
but you
so
know what?
annoying.
A good cake is worth it, man. It's worth it. I'm gonna add about half of this. Now to that, I'm gonna add a cup of sour cream.
Wow.
Ooh.
Wow.
That's a lot of
You're
tang.
going rogue.
That's more acid. Now that the sour cream is in there, I don't need to use the mixer to mix the rest of the flour in there because I want to work the flour as little as possible. And so we should add 12 ounces of chocolate chips. I always hanker for like a little bit of like just good old semi-sweet chocolate chips. Then in the cocoa powder and greased lined pans, and we have the cocoa powder in there again, gives it more flavor. Gives it more flavor, gives it a darker color, more chocolatey. Notice how I'm putting the batter down and then just tapping it so I don't smear the bottom and ruin the effect of the greased pan. We're gonna go in the oven. So I'm gonna let these bake in the oven at 350 for about 40 to 50 minutes. Well, we're making a little frosting, and I'm just gonna kind of show you. I've melted chocolate and sugar and underneath it is my cream.
Okay.
So when you make what's essentially a ganache, which is cream and chocolate melted together, getting the chocolate melted and the cream warm and getting them closer to each other in temperature will give you a glossier ganache.
That's a very good hack.
Right?
Using water.
Instead of pouring hot cream over cold chocolate, warm that chocolate up, get it ready, and just pour the cream over it, and it's better. This is just really easy to do, right? Chocolate, sugar, melted gently over your cream on the stove so they're both kind of warm. And then just gently stir them, no need to whisk. And then you just get this vibrant, glossy ganache, right? And then we just gently stir in 1.5 sticks of butter to this cream and chocolate mix. And this is essentially our souped up buttery ganache. You let this chill in the fridge, right? And then it becomes this, and you just whip it a little bit in the mixer.
Oh, this is gonna be like insanely good.
The thing about buttercream is adding all the butter kind of chills the chocolate flavor out, right? So we're glad we have that cocoa in the cake. I've got equal parts of bourbon and simple syrup here. It's kind of like a, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And this is called imbibing your cake, right? That's the actual technical term. Here we're creating a little insurance policy for the moisture of your cake, and this is even better when you let the cake hang out and sit for a while, but who can wait for that? Put a little bit right in the middle, right? Because we're layering. Spread, but not too much. You've got to let gravity do some of the work, right? We don't need to spend all this time spreading so much. I know if you spread too much, you get a lot of crumbs mixed with your frosting. So you see I went almost to the edge, flat bottom on top. You could do this on a Lazy Susan and spin it if you like. And then you know that the rest of this is to just go on top and on the sides. So I like to just go for broke. So you notice when I'm spreading, I'm not getting anywhere near the cake, and I'm not spreading any crumb into my frosting. I'm just pushing it off to the sides a little bit.
It's going down.
And then we just push gently. Now, you can frost away like this and have a real party, obviously. You can also, when you're done, take a spatula and run it under hot water and just smooth the edge with a hot spatula.
Look how beautiful that looks, just like that.
And there it is. So let's cut, right? Let's get in here.
That's the reason why I haven't made cake in 12 years, because it takes too long.
There you go. All right, here we are.
Making a big batch of Knock You Naked brownies. I start with a German chocolate cake mix, and then to that I'm gonna add 1/3 cup of evaporated milk, and then a stick of melted butter. I'll just mix that a little bit, and then I'll chop up a bunch of pecans. A couple years ago, somebody sent me a gift of killer brownies, and they were so good that I actually rationed them. And this is the closest recipe I've found to the killer brownies that I was given. Brownies are perfect for football food because the whole thing about football food is it needs to be easy to grab and eat with your hands. So I couldn't imagine having a layered cake or something fussy. It just needs to be quick and something that the guys can just grab. And I don't know, there's something about giving old college friends a batch of Knock You Naked brownies that kind of cracked me up. But I'm kind of mischievous that way. You'll need about 1 cup of pretty finely chopped pecans. So I'll add these to the mix and just stir them up. It's a really, really thick batter. You can't pour it at all. You have to really kind of smush it with a rubber spatula to get it combined. So right now, I'm just going to use half of this mixture. So what I do is I just press it into the bottom of the bowl, and then I use my spatula to draw a line right down the middle. And then I know I'm getting exactly half the dough. Math has always been my strong suit. Just stick it in this greased and floured pan, and then the easiest way to do it is just use your fingers to pat it all along the bottom. All right, now it goes in the oven 350 degrees for 8 to 10 minutes until it's done. Okay, I've got a double boiler going, and I've just unwrapped 60 caramels. I didn't eat one, I promise. I'm gonna add 1/2 cup of evaporated milk. Now I added 1/3 cup earlier, so we've almost used the whole can. And then just give it a little stir, and this will take a little while to melt. Okay, oh, the caramel's perfect. Nice and smooth. Now I'm gonna grab the brownies out of the oven. These aren't actually done, they're just set. And you're not gonna believe what I'm about to do to these. Grab the melted caramel sauce, and it just goes in a layer over the first layer of brownies. Okay, now I'll just spread it out into a layer. Now I'm gonna grab some chocolate chips and just sprinkle them on. And you really just need a single layer of chocolate chips. The brownies are gooey enough as it is. And now I'm gonna take the other half of the brownie dough. And when I use the first half, I could just use my fingers and press them into the pan, but I can't do that this time because the pan has all this stuff going on. So I'm gonna press it into a square. This all just turns into a gooey, wonderful masterpiece. Okay, now I'm gonna stick this in the oven for another 20 minutes or so, and then I'll take them out and chill them, and then cut them into pieces and serve them to the guys.
For dessert, I am making my Turkish coffee brownies that are rich and fudgy and have the perfect combination of chocolate, cardamom, and coffee. To get started, I'm toasting up some walnuts. These are looking great. They've been in my pan for a few minutes now and they've gotten lightly browned. And now I'll just coarsely chop them. Now I'll set these aside while I whip up my batter. In my big bowl here, I'll combine my dry ingredients. 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of sugar, and 1/3 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder. And then I'll add 2 teaspoons of instant espresso powder, and then 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt and baking powder. I'm gonna add some cinnamon and cardamom to my brownies. And cardamom just adds a really nice floral woodsy element. Okay, I've got my dry ingredients. I'll whisk this to combine. Okay, my dry ingredients are combined, and now I'm gonna mix up my wet ingredients. I have 2 large eggs here, and I like starting with my eggs first in case there's any shell that gets in them. And then I have 1/2 cup of melted butter here that is cooled slightly. I don't want it to be too hot, otherwise it'll cook my eggs. And 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. This is such an easy batter. I'll add my wet ingredients to my dry ingredients and whisk to combine. Okay, and now I'll fold in my walnuts. You can use any nut in these. You could even just skip the nuts. All right, now I'll grab my pan. I've prepared my pan by greasing it and lining it with parchment paper. Greasing it first helps the parchment paper stick, and I also like allowing little wings to come up on the side so that I can use these parchment wings to lift the brownies up out of the pan after they've baked. So I'll just dump my batter right into my pan. This is an 8 by 8 inch. I'll spread out my batter. Okay, now these are gonna bake at 350 for about 25 minutes until the center is set. I'm gonna let these cool now while I make my chocolate coffee glaze. I'll start with 1 cup of powdered sugar, 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder, a pinch of kosher salt, and then I'm also gonna add some cardamom to the glaze as well. Just a little bit goes a long way. And then I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of melted butter, 1 tablespoon of coffee, and it could be freshly brewed or cold. You've gotta have coffee in the glaze and the brownies. And 1 tablespoon of honey will make this glaze glossy. And then just a splash of vanilla, and I'll whisk this until it's smooth. Okay, this consistency is perfect. My brownies have cooled and they're ready for the glaze. This is such a nice, thick, glossy glaze. Got this away from me. Now I'll spread this all over the brownies. I think my swoops are looking good. They just need one more thing. I'm now going to bedazzle my brownies with rainbow chips. Once this glaze is set, I'll slice them into perfect squares.
First thing I need for brownie pudding is 4 eggs and 2 cups of sugar. Can't make brownie pudding without eggs and sugar. You know how the old cliche goes, the way to a man's heart. Here we are 40 years later. When I was 16 and Geoffrey was 18, I used to make him brownies and send them in a big box to school. I think he was the most popular guy in the dorm when they arrived. So I think brownie pudding is very romantic for our anniversary, 40 years. Yikes. Okay, 2 cups of sugar. Okay, so beat these together. Okay, so the next thing I need is cocoa powder and flour. So So first I need 3/4 of a cup of cocoa powder. Okay, that's a half and a quarter. Use really good cocoa powder. Half a cup of flour. And just sift those together. This is really more like something between a brownie and a pudding. It's very sort of like a molten thing in the middle. It's so good. Okay, I'm gonna put that aside while I put the vanilla in. So I've got 1 vanilla bean, just like that. Love the smell of vanilla, it's my favorite. Just gonna snip off the end and then run my knife right down the middle and scrape out the seeds. And just put them right into the mix. Actually, I'm going to show you what this looks like. It's amazing. It's so thick and light yellow. And when it comes off the beater in a ribbon, it's just like that. There's always like one ingredient in a dish that you really can't quite taste, but it makes everything else taste better. And in this one, it's 1 tablespoon of framboise. It's raspberry liqueur. I'm just going to put it on very low speed and just slowly add the dry ingredients. Don't want to make any lumps. So the key about baking this brownie pudding is that it's sort of molten in the middle and it's baked on the outside, so everybody gets a little of each. This smells so delicious. It smells so chocolatey. Fantastic. Okay, the next ingredient is butter. Now don't start with me, you can't make brownies without butter. I've melted 2 sticks of butter and let them cool a little bit. I'm just gonna pour it right in. Anybody who tries to make brownies without butter should be arrested. And for brownie pudding, it makes it very wet and delicious. Perfect. Okay, that's ready. Just pour that into a baking dish. I've got a 9x12 pan that I've already buttered. Any similar size will work for this. Now, does that look chocolatey or what? So I'm gonna smooth it out. And then I'm going to bake it in a water bath. And that's going to make sure that it bakes really evenly. What makes me think I could just serve it like this and Geoffrey would be very happy? Okay, very hot tap water. This is such a great dessert to make ahead. So you can bake it and just leave it on the counter. Okay, I'm going to bake this 325 degrees for exactly 1 hour.
Todd loves sweets, and this is one seriously sweet pie. He also loves chocolate, peanut butter, so this pie covers all the bases. I also love this pie for all of the aforementioned reasons, but I also love it because it begins with a chocolate cookie crust. I'm gonna melt 4 tablespoons of butter in the saucepan and then grind up the cookies. I have exactly 25 chocolate sandwich cookies. Now, I'm just gonna pulse these up. Don't worry about the creamy filling because it just totally disappears and becomes part of the crumbs. Now, the butter is melted. I'll just drizzle it in. Butter and chocolate cookies. Life doesn't get any better than that. And then I'll just give it a couple of pulses just to moisten up the crumbs. And that is it. Very, very uncomplicated. That's one of the things I love about this pie. Now I will make a big mess as I pour the crumbs into the pie pan. And then the easiest way to get it in is just use your hands, start pressing the center. You want the crust to be pretty packed in there so then later when you slice the pie, the crust will stay together. Another thing I love about this crust is that it's a refrigerator pie and it doesn't have to bake. I'm just gonna stick the crust in a 350-degree oven for about 5 or 7 minutes just to get it set. The filling begins with a cup of creamy peanut butter. I'm just gonna eyeball it. I don't wanna go through the effort of measuring it into the cup and then scraping it out of the cup. So if I get a little more or less, it won't hurt anything. All right, and then I've got an 8-ounce package of softened cream cheese. I'll throw it in there, and then I'll just whip this up for a sec. What a yummy, yummy mixture. Now to this mixture, I'll add 1.25 cups of powdered sugar. And the final ingredient, avert your eyes, frozen non-dairy whipped topping. I've been thawing it so it's nice and soft. Of course, you can use regular whipped cream, but it just won't come out with the same consistency as this stuff. Okay, absolutely perfect. All right, now I'm just gonna put this into the cooled crust. I tell you, if you love peanut butter, this is your dessert. The whole kitchen smells like peanut butter right now. And then I'll just spread it around. Look at that, isn't that gorgeous? And that is all there is to it. Now it just needs to sit in the fridge for a couple of hours until it's set.
I thought I'd surprise Michael and Jim with a cake for their anniversary party. So it's 1 3/4 cup of flour. I'm gonna sift all the dry ingredients together. 2 cups of sugar. I'm gonna sift them right into the bowl, mixing bowl. And since it's a chocolate cake with chocolate buttercream, it's got 3/4 cup of cocoa powder, dark chocolate cocoa powder. It smells so good, so chocolatey. Okay, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of baking soda, helps it rise. 1 teaspoon of salt. I'm just gonna sift all these together. So the method of this cake is to sift all the dry ingredients together in a cloud of chocolate. And then I'm gonna slowly mix the wet ingredients into it. Okay, that's the dry ingredients. I'm just gonna mix them on the mixer until they're combined. Okay, now for the wet ingredients. The first thing is a cup of buttermilk. I always shake it because it does settle. Make sure it's well mixed. So I'm gonna do it in a measuring cup. That'll be easier to pour into the cake batter. So I need 1 cup of buttermilk, 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, 2 eggs. Just beat the eggs a little bit. Right into the wet ingredients. I use extra large eggs. 1 teaspoon of good vanilla, really important when you're doing chocolate. Okay, I'm just gonna combine these. And then with the mixer on low, I'm just gonna put it into the dry mixture. And then I have a secret ingredient. Or I should say Michael's grandmother had a secret ingredient. This recipe calls for a cup of hot brewed coffee. And I always think coffee is really important for chocolate. It makes it taste really chocolatey, and that's exactly what this does. Right into the mixture. I've got 2 8-inch cake pans. I lined them with parchment paper, butter and flour. The pressure's on. It has to be good because Michael knows exactly what it is. He actually served this cake to me once at dinner, and I just begged him for the recipe. I didn't have to beg very hard. I'll make sure they're pretty equal size. Okay, into the oven, 350 degrees for 35 to 40 minutes, and then we're gonna cover it with the easiest, most delicious buttercream you've ever seen. So I'll chop up 6 ounces of really good semi-sweet chocolate. I'm just gonna melt the chocolate in a bowl that I've set over simmering water. In the meantime, I'm gonna start the rest of the buttercream. So I need 2 sticks of butter, 1/2 pound, at room temperature. I'm just gonna beat that on medium speed. Okay, the next thing I need is 1 extra large egg yolk and a teaspoon of good vanilla extract. Okay, I think the chocolate's gonna be ready by now. Let's see. Take this off the heat and just let the chocolate cool while I turn the cakes out. Just add it to the butter and vanilla. So I've got 2 teaspoons of hot water. I'm just gonna put in a tablespoon of instant coffee powder, which is a very intense coffee. Just melt this together and pour it into the buttercream. And I'm just gonna whip it for a minute. Make sure it's really well blended. I'm gonna turn it on low and add all this gorgeous chocolate. The chocolate's actually cooled now a little bit. You don't want to pour hot chocolate into butter, otherwise the whole thing will melt. You can really smell the chocolate and the coffee together. A little hint of vanilla. And that's Michael's grandmother's chocolate buttercream. Icing a cake, just go over it very gently. Start from the top and work your way down the sides. Okay, so now I've got buttercream on all sides of the cake. I'm just gonna go up and down the sides. And good news about an old-fashioned cake is it's supposed to be a little messy. And then I'm just gonna smooth the top, just sort of big swirls.